Good morning, guys, and welcome out to Revolution. So we're going to be looking at the King James Version and creationism, and so we've got Matt Singleton in the house. How you doing, Matt?
Oh, in Flago.
How's things been?
Well, just kind of getting around lately. I've been doing a lot of shifts financially, so you got to keep on paying the bills while you're doing that. So worked a whole lot of like old-fashioned dishwashing. If you remember my story, I kind of had to go back there a little bit. So nice and beat up, but praise the Lord.
Okay, so we're going to be looking at creationism and the King James Version, which is quite a big topic because when you read through the scriptures, you'll find things that are quite popular among like the Haizerites, like about the Nephilim. And a lot of the Bible translations just saying in those days there were Nephilim. And they're like, well, we're trying to make the Bibles easier to understand. But then they have these transliterations like Nephilim. And when you look into it, it's like you end up opening up this Pandora's box of, the Book of Enoch and all this sort of strange stuff. And so there's quite a lot involved with the issues of the flood, issues of creationism, issues that I think Standing for Truth has done quite a lot of work on this issue. Their whole ministry is pretty much based around the creationist type model. And then they've sort of put the King James issue in there, where I think we're sort of coming from the King James issue and we're trying to use that as a bit of a basis. And then we're looking at other issues like creationism. But you've given me a clip here of William Lane Craig, Matt. So maybe I'll play this and then I'll get your commentary on it. So I'll just rewind this a little bit. There we go.
Hi, Calvin.
The point is that we don't.
Sorry, my internet
that's
was a tiny little. I might just have to do something with my internet here. For some reason, some days it's really good, and other days it just the whole neighborhood must be downloading some sort of sports thing, or so I'll put it on my phone. There we go, and that should run a little bit better. All right, let's go back to this clip.
The point is that we don't claim to know everything. That's the whole point.
You claim certainty?
No.
I don't get that.
Are you certain that God exists? No. Good. Are you certain that God exists? No. Good.
It just amazes me.
Yeah.
So Matt, are you certain that God
Number one,
exists?
God is the best explanation.
Sorry.
You can make really good arguments that there's no God, and you might try to convince me of them. I just don't think I can convince God of them. Because Jesus is in my heart, so I know that I didn't have the punchline really right there, but the thing is, like what was it? Let me see if I can say it the right way. Okay, because this is not like the way I would really be thinking, but like your arguments against God sounds good. I just don't think I convince him of them. Like basically, yeah, God is in my heart, so it's stupid for me to tell God, oh, sorry, you don't exist. So there is a certainty naturally. Faith needs to be certain. Let's I'll tell you what, I was going to hit this a little later, but let's go ahead and look at Hebrews 11, verse 1. Well, and I was going to do 1 through 3, so yeah, we'll just do that right now. We'll do that one passage real quick.
Okay, I'll just bring it up on the screen.
All right. As long as it's I guess like use Bible Gateway because I don't think they're paying Mark Ward, right?
I think, yeah, he's got his fingers in all these pies now.
You never know.
Well, this new version.
Maybe that was Mark Ward's voice inside William Lane Craig's. No!
All right, here we go. Hebrews 11, 1-3. Whoops, I'm not showing anyone that. There we go.
All right. So, yeah, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Now, substance, by the way, is kind of an economic term. Sometimes I'll refer back to Tyndale on this one just because, like, you got these word faith people that'll start to say, oh, it's a substance and get all esoteric with it. But it's the substance of things that are hoped for as they amount the evidence of the things that are not seen. So these are rational things. Faith is something to be rationally understood and quantified. Now, William Lane Craig is actually getting this from Catholicism, from Thomas Aquinas. And Thomas Aquinas divorced faith from reason. So in doing that, faith doesn't have to be rational. And the other thing that's kind of funny is that, like, here he is getting into it with his other buddy who's the atheist, but both of them at the end of the day are big bangers, right? So he wants to make sure that he's in tune with this godless man. And so it's like, no, I'm not certain. We can all be uncertain together, and it's supposed to make him like more objective. Now, while I'm at it, this is a book here. I'm going to do some show and tell today. You see this picture right here? Okay, there it is. Yeah.
The Easter egg.
This egg, it's called the cosmic egg. That one is specifically referring to Greek paganism, but it's also in Hindu paganism and in Egyptian paganism. Actually, we would usually refer to it as Ra, okay? And so the sun god is this like circle god, and that circle god is the egg. It's the cosmic egg. And so when George Lemaitre, a Jesuit astronomer, decided to come up with the Big Bang Theory, he came up with the cosmic egg. Okay, so that pagan egg is what they are in, lockstep agreement with. So, yeah, that's what I had to say about that one. I was going to make more of a commentary to both. Let's look at that next commentary or the video.
Next video, okay. So this one
Frank
here.
Turk.
All right.
But it does talk about creating land animals, and dinosaurs would be in that category.
I'm Liam, and I wanted to know why the Bible doesn't talk about dinosaurs.
Oh, excellent question. Well, actually, the Bible does talk about dinosaurs. It talks about the land mammals or the land animals, but it doesn't talk about all the land animals. Like it doesn't talk about, elephants, even though elephants existed. It doesn't talk about gazelles, even though gazelles existed. The Bible just talks about categories, the land animals. So no document. A lot of people think the Bible is going to tell you everything about everything. No book could do that. What's the purpose of the Bible? The purpose of the Bible is to make you wise unto salvation, as Paul says in 2 Timothy 3. It's focused, but it does talk about creating land animals, and dinosaurs would be in that category. Does that make sense? But it does talk about creating.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
So, yeah. So, Frank, go ahead.
So, unfortunately, I don't think I showed that clip.
No,
it's actually quite hard when I've got a guest I forget to do lots of things, and I'm like, hang on, I'm showing a video and I'm watching it and no one else is seeing it.
Yeah.
But I think you
Just my
you heard that.
faces.
Do you want me to show that again? I think I'll show it again. It only goes for a minute.
Yeah, we got time. Yeah. There
we go. That's a better view. I'll stop messing around with the views and muting things and
land animals, and they would.
Here we go.
But it does talk about creating land animals, and dinosaurs would be in that category.
I'm Liam, and I wanted to know why the Bible doesn't talk about dinosaurs.
Oh, excellent question. Well, actually, the Bible does talk about dinosaurs. It talks about the land mammals or the land animals, but it doesn't talk about all the land animals. Like it doesn't talk about, elephants, even though elephants existed. It doesn't talk about gazelles, even though gazelles existed. The Bible just talks about categories, the land animals. So no document. A lot of people think the Bible is going to tell you everything about everything. No book could do that. What's the purpose of the Bible? The purpose of the Bible is to make you wise unto salvation, as Paul says in 2 Timothy 3. It's not to tell you everything about everything. No book could. It's focused. But it does talk about creating land animals, and dinosaurs would be in that category. Does that make sense?
Okay. So what are your thoughts on that, Mark?
Wow. So one thing that's kind of interesting is that the Hebrew language, the first letter of the Hebrew language, where we get the letter A from, is referring to antelope. And the gazelle is a type of antelope. It's actually the gazelle is actually an antelope all over the Hebrew Bible, right? But yeah, this one kind of hits particularly hard because he's making up a problem for the kid, and the kid just doesn't know any better, and he's reinforcing it. How do we know that that's the only defense of the Bible that kid could have? What if he's the only answer they have? Oops, it's all supposed to be about salvation. It's a bunch of lies that get you to heaven. Yeah, because if everything is founded on a bunch of lies, then, well, I know I'm going to heaven. Yeah, so let's go ahead and look at this area. And there's another video he had, and he's repeated this teaching a couple times. Now, let's look at Job chapter 41. And yeah, in another place, he talks about how they believe this is a crocodile. And, it gets kind of weird because he was telling us about how this is all about land animals. And so he talked about land animals and therefore dinosaurs. But not all dinosaurs are land animals, okay? But let's look at this creature in Job 41. Canst thou, let me see, I don't know if you have, okay, there we go. Canst thou draw out the Leviathan with a hook, or his tongue with a cord, which thou lettest down? Canst thou put an hook in his nose, or bore his jaw through with a thorn? Will he make supplications unto thee? Will he speak soft words unto thee? Okay, so far, now, there's a lot of verses talking about this guy. But, you could say, well, the crocodile, he's tough. So can you get him out with a hook? Well, I tell you what, there are crocodiles that get caught. And we'll go a little further. Or his tongue with a cord. Now, his tongue, the crocodile and the alligator, their tongue is not what we think of as a contemporary tongue. It doesn't stick out of the mouth. It's completely sealed down. Now, some trying to justify themselves are trying to say that, it can move around a little bit, but you're not necessarily, wrapping it. So that's something impossible. But yet there's other things that should be theoretically possible when they're describing this animal. Let's see here. Canst thou put a hook in his nose? Well, yeah, you can. Or bore his jaw through with a thorn. Well, maybe not a thorn. Will he make supplications? Okay, we already said that. Verse 4, will he make a covenant with thee? Will thou take him for a servant forever? Yeah, there's these guys that wrestle alligators. Will thou play with him as a bird? Will thou bind him for thy maidens? Well, yeah, you could actually, make crocodile boots and all sorts of things for your loved ones or whatever. Shall the companions make a banquet of him? There are some people who might eat alligator. Not that it's really that, something you want to do, but anyway. I don't know. There's all these legends about Australia, Nick. What do you think? Can you eat alligator?
I've eaten crocodile.
Uh-oh. Canst thou fill his skin with barbed irons and his head with fish spears? I showed you a picture of the internet where natives were, killing the alligators with spears. So it's, there's confusion here because 1 minute it says something and you're thinking it can't do this, and then all of a sudden it can, and then it says it can, but it actually can't. So this description just doesn't really fit a lot. Lay thine hand upon him, remember the battle, do no more. Behold, the hope of him is in vain. Canst thou draw at the sight of him? None of his, none of his fears dare stir him up. Then he's able to stand before me. Okay. And let's see here. Who can discover the face of his garment? And who can, excuse me. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. By his neesings light doth shine, and his eyes like the eyelids of the morning. When you look at crocodiles, are they, shining their beautiful sneezes at you? Okay. Maybe, I don't know. Actually, this is what a lot of us believe to be a dinosaur. But you know why the King James does not use the word dinosaur?
I think it wasn't invented till 1830.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So if you were to see a giant reptile on any level, would you have said, it's a dinosaur? Let me give you a weird, duckbill platypus. Not platypus. What was the duckbill dinosaurs called? We'll go with like the Triceratops and the Diplodocus. What was some other ones? Tyrannosaurus. We're going to use a bunch of Latin words, right? No, you would say that that's a giant reptile, and you usually say that's a dragon. That was a common term, is the dragon.
Mm.
Or you could use a term like this, Leviathan. Now, if the earth is young, then all this stuff should fit together in one ecosystem. But we might be getting ahead of ourselves. Because I just wanted to show those videos because that's what the common public is often dealing with. And that's all they know about Christianity.
Mm.
Are you certain that God exists? No!
It does seem like that's the type of thing that you see in the Textual Confidence Collective with Mark Ward. Like having uncertainty is considered a virtue in academia. But the thing is, I'm certain 1 + 1 = 2. To have uncertainty about that is insanity.
Yeah. Well, and the problem is that you really don't have to have uncertainty on any level. You just have to have the openness to learn something you don't know.
Mm.
There are things that you might not know yet, but you just perceive them and then take the evidence and move forward. I might not know what's behind door number 3. Okay, well, fine, I'll look. Whoop-de-doo. Not, we'll never know.
Yeah.
You'll never know what's behind that door. I can tell you it's my bathroom, but no, you'll never know. Ooh.
Or you open the door and you walk in there and it's like, you can still never know. It could be an illusion. It could be a matrix,
This is actually going back to the these liberal philosophies, okay? What is it? The existentialism. Existentialism talked about taking a leap into the dark, and a lot of people think it was just about being religious, but actually, no, it denies a lot of religion, and it also atheists would actually end up in existentialism too. But religion for them was worshiping the mystery without having an idea what does the mystery say. Now, when we talk about science, we are brainwashed to think that science is this thing that's against the Bible. If you believed science, you would have faith in evolution. You would take your little beaker and you'd shake it up and say, "Ooh, please show me the way." No, okay. My comedy is really bad, so I got to just apologize in advance. But anyhow, no, science is just knowledge. And you have to understand that the Bible actually does provide scientific information. Let me go over a couple with you. And I'll start here. This is from my article, Preserved Inerrancy. But anyhow, I'm just going to read straight through it. Science agrees with the Bible. Proposition number 1, the darkness of space. Now, these are ancient people. They could have said that the sun is like, the backdrop instead of space. But they said the darkness. So Genesis 1:2, and the earth was formless and without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. The Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So that's the first proposition, that the darkness of space. Also, next proposition, the invisible structure. The idea that the physical universe is upheld by invisible forces. Hebrews 11:3. Through faith, we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. So the things that are made are not made of these invisible materials, which is what the Big Bang Theory teaches. They think they are made of things that do appear. No. But the physical universe is upheld by invisible forces. The stars have a structure. Job 26:13. By his spirit he hath garnished the heavens. His hand hath formed the crooked serpent. That's the one we call Draco. 1 Corinthians 15:40. There are also celestial bodies and bodies terrestrial. But the glory of the celestial is one, and the glory of the terrestrial is another. So these different structures are different creations. Next, the stars are innumerable. And you got to remember, some of these ancient societies had no clue about some of these scientific facts. Jeremiah 33:22. As the host of heaven cannot be numbered, neither can the sand of the sea measured, so will I multiply the seed of David my servant and the Levites that minister unto me. Modern science has not found the number of the stars, nor can they, because we're not actually knowing what all is what size once we get past a certain point. And a lot of times we'll see areas that'll be black as night, and turns out it'll be hiding thousands of galaxies with billions of stars each. Next is the global spin and the solar circuit. Psalm 19:4. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race, and his goings forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit unto the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. Now, by the way, the sun going up and down and going around this circuit actually debunks the flat earth theory, because the God in Isaiah talks about God is over the north, but we know the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. So now you have a full plane, and the sun is going around the earth. Okay, the earth hangs in balance. Job 26:7. He stretcheth out the north over the empty place, and hangeth the earth upon nothing. But I thought that it was the great deep waters that the island of the flat earth was. No, it's nothing. Okay? It's hanging on nothing. Gravity. Proverbs 26:27. Whoso diggeth a pit shall fall therein, and he that rolleth a stone, it will return on him. The land, or the earth, emerged out of the water. Genesis 1:10 and 11. And God called the dry land earth, and gathered together the waters he the seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is itself upon the earth. And it was so. Let's see here. All right. The wind cycle. Ecclesiastes 1:6. The wind goeth toward the south, and turneth about unto the north. It whirled about continually, and the wind returned again according to his circuits. Job 26:8. The rain cycle. He bindeth up the waters in his thick clouds, and the cloud is not rent under them. Deep sea rivers. This is a big one, because how are they going to find this? Deep sea rivers. Psalm 8:8. The fowl of the air and the fish of the sea, and whatsoever passeth through the paths of the seas. Those paths of the seas are hundreds and hundreds of feet down. And I don't know how you're going to find the paths of the seas if you believe in plate tectonics. A little clue for later. All right, and medical benefits of running water. Leviticus 15:13 and Leviticus 13:46. I'm going to just skip past this a little bit. I think we kind of got where I needed to go. So we have all these mentions of physical, scientific facts in the scriptures. Now, what people don't really understand is that the humanist, we could say the naturalist, there's just a lot of different, labels that they want to use to kind of disguise themselves. But the laws of science are in contradiction with the evolutionary Big Bang naturalistic humanistic paradigm. The first law of thermodynamics: matter is neither created nor destroyed. Now, as a creationist, I know that science is talking about non-physical matter. Science cannot speculate on the non-physical. So that is a law for the physical things. But the Big Bang Theory is a physical law that, or it's supposed to be a physical law, that matter is created out of matter. Now, first law of thermodynamics. Let me make sure I'm getting that right. Matter can neither be created nor destroyed. So, by the fact that you have the Big Bang, you have matter being created. Now, by the way, there was a 1982 Arkansas trial, and the Judge William Overton made a statement about creationism being unscientific because it had matter being created. Now, what happened was that the Big Bang Theory was around, but it was not fully formed yet. Now they have a doctrine called cosmic inflation. So now they have this that was debunked before it even got popular, where the universe went from a pinhole to 99% of its size, faster than the speed of light. Most people assume that light speed is a law. Gravity. If you have all the mass in the universe condensed to the size of a pinhole, then all of that energy is going inward and not outward. So you have to break the law of gravity for the Big Bang to start. All right, now the next thing is Boyle's gas law. Now, when you heat gas, the gas expands. Now, the theory of star formation is that out in space, the gases got condensed, and they condensed so hard that not only did they become hot, but not only did they become nuclear, but they became fusion, which is 100% opposite of what we had. Your space clouds, which are the most condensed gases, are negative 300 degrees Celsius. You're not going to turn them into fusion by accident. And you're not going to turn them into fusion and then have it reproduced billions upon trillions of times. That's impossible. Also, the law of pasteurization by Louis Pasteur. Living material produces living material. Dead material cannot produce living material. That is a scientific law. Now, the other night, what's the name of that debate program you were talking about?
Which one was that? The William Carey thing?
No, it was a debate show. A lot of the guys you see here, they frequent over there. They'll be
standing for truth.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they had some guys, some atheists, arguing for abiogenesis. And basically that is breaking the law of pasteurization. They're like, we're going to do it. We've got this scientist going. We got that going. We got that going. It's all going to work out. No, it's not. That's the law of science. It's like, I'm going to float away, Nick. You better watch out. It's just going to happen. Like, no, there's a law of gravity. Maybe I can manipulate things. I sure can't in here. But maybe, maybe things can be manipulated. But at the end of the day, the law of gravity still is in effect.
Well, that's one of the things when I'm out witnessing, I use the Louis Pasteur issue to just say to people, look, we believe that all life came from something living, from God, who's alive, which doesn't go against the laws of nature. But to go to claim that life came from non-life, like most atheists do, and most of them try to separate these issues of when life occurred or when the Big Bang happened. But they most of them believe the same thing, and so it comes down to life coming from non-life. Apparently, it rained on a rock for a long time, and then magically life appeared, which is magic. That's just they have a creation narrative of their own. They just wrap it in scientific linguistics, and they present it to us as if it's science, where it actually goes against science. And what happened to this life? Why did it continue on for until today? Why didn't it just die out? And there's so many questions.
It started out from a tough background, from the hood. Okay. You know how tough that cell was? Yo, dog. Okay. That cell formed in the middle of rock solid salt. Okay. I mean, it was like, because 75 million years ago, the oceans would have been pure salt if we look at the salinity levels, right? So, 3 billion years ago, all right, this bacteria just kind of shook together, all right, and all trillion of its parts said, we are family, okay? And then, I'm going to get my flagellum with me, and then they just, boom, okay, right through the rock. Yeah.
But it was a simple life form, apparently. But when you look at some of these simple life forms that get talked about now, we have, microscopes that can go, beyond any type of level that Darwin could have ever imagined. We can see that there's really no such thing as a simple life form. They're all very complicated. Like the simplest life form that we know is more complicated than New York City. And so to think that this life form just appeared and it's a simple life form, it's actually way more complex than anyone can imagine.
We have molecules now doing intelligent acts, fixing things, fixing DNA helix, rotating with motors. I mean, it's insane. And, we have all this stuff. But, the problem is that they're still in fantasy world, right? So, while they're trying to think of this as all just, it's a big accident, the truth is that you have the second law of thermodynamics. And that means that all the energy is shutting down. All energy is decreasing. Well, hold on. What happens to genes? Well, what happens to genes is what we call genetic entropy. And so as these genes reproduce over and over, they just get banged up and mutilated just a little bit. Okay, kind of like the way I feel right now because I just got done working manual labor again. But yeah, all this stuff, it over time, it's going to destroy, and it's going in the opposite direction. There is some bacteria, and I've got a friend, Isaac Bourne of YEC headquarters, and he found this petri dish. I mean, he didn't find the dish, but he found this story about it. And this dish has been breeding bacteria since 1990. And it passed 50,000 generations. Apparently, 50,000 generations or cycles is what is required for macroevolution to happen. So it should have been changing. And they say, well, it changed a little, but it's still bacteria, right? Well, the problem is that now we go according to their uniformitarian geology, and the oldest life forms is bacteria that's supposed to be 3 billion years old. Well, that means that how many generations, if every 30 to 50 years, if every about 30 years gives us 50,000 generations, then how many generations are we talking back 3 billion years? Okay. So, this stuff is just, I mean, this is the normal stuff. It's basically impossible. But I wanted to kind of start on the easy stuff. So here we see the naturalistic, humanistic worldview actually getting into it with science. Meanwhile, the Bible doing good. Okay. Now, one of the problems is that in a academic world that had been taken over by evolution, is that going to affect the way we see things with the Bible? What you think?
Sorry, I was reading this comment there, Matt. Can you repeat that?
Okay, I was saying just, if evolution is basically taking over academia, do you think that's going to affect the way we see the Bible?
Absolutely. I think the link between modern day textual criticism and the way that they are reconstructing a text and constantly evolving to a better reading is the evolution model. And so it affects bibliology a lot.
So I've covered this in my book. I'm going to read two different quotes. Well, there's a couple quotes, so we'll do that. The higher criticism of an awakened critical faculty to a particular kind of material and was encouraged by the achievement of this faculty to form its bold conclusions. If the biologist, the geologist, the astronomers, and the anthropologist had not been at work, I venture to think that the higher critics would have been either non-existent or a tiny minority in a world of fundamentalists. That was by F.M. Powicki, a modern historian and the study of history. That was quoted in the Genesis record by Henry Morris. So Henry Morris, this guy right here, a lot of people would call him the founder of the modern creation science movement. Not to be confused with Ken Ham. Ken Ham is under him. Deal with it, Ham. But anyhow, let's see here. Now, Professor J.J. Reeve, still dealing with higher criticism. My personal experience with the higher criticism, chapter 19 of the Fundamentals, that's R.A. Torrey's Fundamentals, page 350 and 351. He says, on examining the evolution of the leaders of the critical school, I found that it was naturalistic or practical deistic kind. All natural and mental phenomenon are in a closed system of cause and effect, and the hypothesis applies universally to religion and evolution, as well as to mechanisms. This type of evolution may not be accepted by all adherents of the critical school, but it's substantially the view of the leaders. Roos, Graf, that's the Graf Wellhausen, Kunin and Wellhausen. To them, all nature and history are a product of forces within and in process development. There has not been and could not be any direct action of God upon man. There could be no break in the chain of cause and effect or antecedent and consequent. Hence, there can be no miracle or anything of what is known as the supernatural. There could be no interference in any way with the natural course of events. There could be no injection of any power into the cosmic process from without. God is shut up to the one method of bringing things to pass. He is thus little more than a prisoner in his own cosmos. Thus, I discovered that the critical movement was essentially and fundamentally anti-supernatural, and anti-miraculous. According to it, all religious movements are human developments along natural lines. The religion of Israel and the Bible is no exception to this principle. The revelation contained in the Bible is, strictly speaking, no revelation. It is a natural development with God in the cosmic process behind it, but yet as a ready, straight-lined, mechanical development such as can be traced step by step as a flight of the stairs may be a foot rule. There could have been no epic making revelation, no revival and lapse, no marvelous exhibitions of divine power, no real redemption. With these foregone conclusions fixed in their minds, the entire questioning is practically settled beforehand. Okay, I know it's a long quote. Now I don't know. I do have this from an article, A New Look at an Old Word, the Textual Criticism History. I don't know if you remember that link on Facebook.
Oh, yeah, it was a Facebook one. I'll be a sec. I'll just reopen Facebook. I just shut it down because I was... here we go.
Okay. And let me see if I can find the next quote. Okay. Scroll down to Higher Criticism. The first quote is actually pretty good too. Before the whole higher critical theories, okay, how did we look at the Gospels historically? All right, let's see here. Do you have that article up?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find it in the chat there.
Okay. I'll go ahead and read this one because there's another one I want you to read afterwards.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think I got it.
Okay.
This is the this one here.
Oh no,
That's not it.
No.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and just keep reading. All right. Higher Criticism. This is basically from my New Look at an Old Word book. Let's see if I got it here somewhere. Oh, well. All right. It says the Gospels were seen as historical narratives, reporting what Jesus said and did based on eyewitness testimony. Importantly, it did not require faith to see the Gospels in this way. There was as yet no reason to think otherwise. But over the last 200 years among historical scholars, both within and outside the church, the common image of Jesus has dissolved. That was Marcus Borg, and he was from the Jesus Seminars. But he's got a book, The Meaning of Jesus, Two Visions, Chapter 1. Him and a theological moderate kind of go back and forth. Not a conservative, just a moderate. Okay, and then the last quote I'll get, well, no, I need one more after that. All right, so this quote is from Gleason Archer. Gleason Archer is a conservative evangelical of sorts. He is to the left of, let's say Ken Ham, but he's not far left. He's just a old earther. So this is just kind of interesting. The evolution of the historical development was the chief contribution of liberal critics to the exegesis of the Old Testament. Remember, he's not a rock-ribbed conservative, though. All right, but he's noticing this. It says, it is true, of course, this conception did not grow merely from an objective reading of the sources. In a larger sense, it was a reflection of the intellectual temper of the times. The genetic conception of the Old Testament history fitted in with the evolution principle of interpretation, prevailing in contemporary science and philosophy. In the natural science, the influence of Darwin had made the theory of evolution the predominant hypothesis affecting research. In the historical science and the religious and philosophical thought, the evolutionary concept had begun to exercise power and influence after Hegel, and substantially the notion of becoming for notion of being, and at the notion by a priori reasoning without testing it by scientific application to observable fact. But Hegel was nonetheless the intellectual progenitor of the modern point of view. In every departure of the historical investigation of development was being used to help, to explain the history of man's thought, institutions, and even religious faiths. It was not strange that the same principle should be approved to the explanation of Old Testament history. In every age, exegesis has conformed to the type, and the latter half of the 19th century thought was dominated by this scientific method and an evolutionary view of history. That's Gleason Archer, quoted from the book Evidence That Demands a Verdict. Woo, that's a lot of quoting. But the big deal is that, evolution, if it affects humanity, then it has to affect the humanities. Okay, so now we know that the critical higher theories are definitely evolutionary. Now, I have a quote from a peer-reviewed journal. This is Alfred Martin, A Critical Examination of the Westcott and Hort Textual Theory. It was his PhD thesis at Dallas Theological Seminary, May 1951, page 70. At precisely the time when liberalism was carrying the field in the English churches, the theory of Westcott and Hort received wide acclaim. These are not isolated facts. Recent contributions on the subject, that is, the present century, following mainly the Westcott Hort principles and method, have been made largely by men who deny the inspiration of the Bible. All right. What do you think?
Yeah, really good. Really good. We have one question here from Law of Liberty. So I'm pretty sure Law of Liberty recently did some stuff on Standing for Truth about the post-trib, pre-wrath position with Donny. And so I guess he sort of follows the Stephen Anderson type of eschatology model. And so he's against dispensationalism, and he asks the question, will you comment on how many dispensationalists believe in the gap theory and ignore the traditional view of Scripture had they had this strange Gnostic Talmudic doctrine? And so what are your thoughts on that, Matt, if you've got any?
So now it's kind of funny because when you look at the different viewpoints, the King James guys pretty much are still all hanging around the pre-mill. Okay, like we're looking at a huge variety when you get outside of that group. Of course, George Ladd was a textual theory critic guy. He was a post-tribber, and he held to that stuff. I don't put that in this category per se, but going back to it as far as the gap theory, you have to understand that as there's a lot of like hermeneutical questions going on in the 1800s. It was at a period where they're being overwhelmed by because they're basically infiltrated inside the church. Okay, so like instead of like, oh, this outside atheist is coming at me, no, all these guys are churchmen. Charles Darwin is an Anglican with a seminary degree, no biology degree, just a seminary degree.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're having these attacks on the inside, and they say, hey, you know what? If the science doesn't work because all these guys are doing it, so it must be science. I mean, it's really, unfortunately, the way they were thinking. If everybody says yes, that must be science. So what do? Well, I pray about it, and I said, you know what? You can reinterpret the Bible. So the gap theory was great because you could put this little section and keep the rest of the Bible. So they said, okay, we'll have this gap right here, and, the rest of the Bible we're going to keep, but it just doesn't work out. And, we're going to hit that topic on a different level a little bit later on. I might need to take just a little break to get myself some refreshment and stuff because
Yeah, go for it.
Starting to wear down my voice. All right. So
I'll talk about some of the things coming up here.
Okay, awesome.
So I'll just mute Matt there. I've contacted Jonathan Sheffield, who has debated Bart Ehrman and a few other people, and so we have him coming on the program, and he is going to be debating David Preston. So we've been trying to line up a good debate about the Apocrypha for quite a while. Now, one of the things is Jonathan Sheffield is an Anglican guy, and so he does tend to have a little bit more of a, I was going to say traditional type of view. I guess they sort of believe in like an apostolic succession in a sense, where you have your true churches that have this genealogical link back to an apostle. And so that seems to be what Jonathan Sheffield believes. I could be wrong. I could be, saying things that aren't quite accurate there. But it does seem like that. And so here we have someone who would relate back to the King James Bible because it was a product of Anglicanism. But then also the Westcott and Hort text is a product of Anglicanism as well. And so is Dean John William Burgon was also an Anglican. So it's quite interesting to hear the point of view of someone who studies Anglican history and looks at people like Lancelot Andrews. And then we have David Preston, who is considered King James only, but he also adopts the Apocrypha as scripture. So this has been something that we've been wanting to discuss for quite a while. And so the whole concept of, is the Apocrypha inspired? I threw up a thumbnail just sort of as soon as I heard it was announced. I just quickly made something on Adobe Illustrator, which was, is the Apocrypha scripture? But someone rightly pointed it out and said, well, even the term Apocrypha means it's not scripture. So it's sort of like saying, he showed me how it was sort of a bit of a contradiction in terms. And so I should really say, is the Apocrypha inspired or something like that? But so that's probably going to be our next debate on this channel. Now, I know, Matt, you're looking at debating was it a Lutheran guy about whether the Baptist church is has a representatives in the first, second, third century, I think it was.
Yeah, so I would prefer that it was like if there were New Testament Christians in the first 5 centuries. I think he likes the title Baptist, and honestly, at this stage, I don't know why, but like I was able to debate people when I had my own channel, but now it's kind of like I got to work for it, right? I got to get them to feel confident to take a swing at me. So he's like, "Yeah, you said it's a Baptist," and now I got to prove Irenaeus is a Baptist, which I'm feeling decently confident on, but I got to get more of his writing and stuff to kind of verify it. The writing I do have is consistent, but I'm not seeing anything really talking specifically about baptism, so I got to check that out. But do not fear, I do have plenty of stuff to kind of go with on that one, so we'll have some fun.
So just before you start there, Matt, I just noticed we've got Christian McShaffrey in the house, who is kept pure in all ages, and they've just finished their Reformation Bible Society conference a few weeks back. So they've started to upload their videos. So I might just give them a quick little plug here. So we have, I'll just show my YouTube, which I'll just type in Jeff Riddle LXX, and it should come up. Okay. Okay, so they are on Jeff Riddle's Word Magazine channel, and they're also on Christian McShaffrey's channel. And so here we have Christian McShaffrey. This is lecture number 4. And so the whole conference is about the Septuagint. So it's very interesting. Now, I listened to the first lecture, and all the hairs on the back of my head stood up, and I was like, oh, I don't know, is this guy going to go with the Trinitarian Bible Society way of sort of saying, that there was a Septuagint before Christ? But I was like, well, I'm open, we're open to that type of evidence, but whether Christ used it, that's a whole other thing, and whether the disciples used it. So he brought across his lesson. Then Jeff Riddle, I'm very used to Jeff's material, listening to it, so I knew where he was coming from. A third lecture was amazing. It was so good, just about how the Reformation perspective of the LXX, and just going through some of the critiques of the LXX, and people saying, well, obviously we're going to go with the Hebrew. We're not going to go with the Greek translation. That's faulty. And so then Christian McShaffrey has released a video. So I actually haven't looked at this yet, but I'd encourage everyone to go to these videos. I'll just put them there in the chat. So this is a little bit of a commercial break, and we're just promoting a few other things. So go to Jeff Riddle's Word Magazine, subscribe to his material. He brings out a lot of good material, like this one, The Women Behind Your Critical Text Editions. It's a great one. This one here, Revelation 1:6, how he shows what they want to introduce a new reading into the book of Revelation, that Jesus has become the Alpha and the Omega. Instead of I am the Alpha and the Omega, Jesus has become. He says, I have become the Alpha and the Omega. And I was like, no, this is a terrible reading. And so, so I saw Christian McShaffrey there, and I thought I'd give him a bit of a plug. Anyway, so back to you there, Matt. That's the end of our commercial break.
All right. So I figured it would be a good time to kind of go over some key passages, why we understand a literal creation. Now, one thing to kind of understand, in our current context, Genesis 1 has been inoculated. People are so used to it that, if you are of the evolutionary mentality, you just shut down. You're like, oh, days are special, and, they're not to be taken literally. Or, yeah, there was a gap. Or, oh, this is all chiastic parallelism. These are all these, incredible forms of poetic literature and, all 11, 12 chapters of Genesis. Oh, it's all a legend. I mean, it's just one excuse after another. And unfortunately, what happens to people is they get so inoculated, they don't have any sensitivity to whether or not this is true and how to interpret it. There's so many different interpretations. So what I did is I go a little elsewhere. Now, in apologetics, I've got a case for God from history, and I'll use historians who are agreeing with the Genesis account, even though I'm not using Genesis 1, because the historians, are using a historical genre. Okay? Well, here, I'm not going there. I'm going to biblical authority, but with the same principle. So we're going to go to Exodus chapter 31. And we'll be starting at verse 14.
Can I ask you just one question, Matt, before you go there?
Sure.
Do you believe like that the earth is 6,000 years old, or are you're 10,000 years old, or where would you fall into your young earth creationism? Do you believe that the earth was created in like 404, or what's your perspective or your quick answer to that?
I am definitely in the 6,000 range. I'm fine with the 4004 BC, but I'll be honest with you. I saw, your favorite buddy, Steven Anderson. He seemed like he was off his medication, so he's on his medication. So he was doing good with his study, and he kind of talked about how it could be off by a century or so. So I could have some flexibility within a century or so, but generally I would stick there. And the reason is because the Masoretic chronology goes back. I think there's some disagreement with like a statement of 400 years in Hebrews, but otherwise it's all in that 6,000 year range. When we look at the Septuagint, they add 100 years to every individual in their initial genealogy. So that is why they have the big disagreement, 6 versus 10,000 years. But in the Septuagint, they believe that Methuselah survived Noah's flood, even though Peter says that Noah's flood only had 8 survivors. His 3 sons, 3 wives, and him and his wife. So Methuselah must have been hanging on the anchor, That's how it lasted so long. It's amazing. This guy, Gavin Ortland, which I think apparently he's a guy from Fuller. He's getting popular on YouTube. He came on there. He was supposed to be an expert on the Septuagint. I mean, he seemed to know his stuff. But it's funny because in this other video, he says, well, I believe in inerrancy. And while he's giving his lecture, he's like, I'm not trying to find the original text. I'm just trying to find a consistent text. And he's like a Septuagint scholar. So, I'm sitting there thinking, how can you not think that Methuselah surviving the flood is an error? So that's kind of one of the big deals there.
Yeah. So I did a video about Jonathan Burris, who we've done videos on together before, because he was talking about someone said that the Septuagint is from 400 and there's no evidence before that. And he just made this sensational sort of claim, which you could, I basically unpeeled it and just showed how what he was saying was not, the way that he worded it wasn't accurate. And so, but then he kept putting his faith in the letter of Aristeas, which even most critical text people say is it's a forgery.
Yeah, it is.
And so, but what's interesting is the Reformation Bible Society, in doing their conference completely on the Septuagint, I'm going to go through their videos in light of what Burris has done, because he mentioned me in his video. I'm not sure if you saw it, but in his second video, he said, I've upset some King James only people and some non-King James only people. So he called me a non-King James onlyist, which is weird because according to White's classifications, even James Snap is a King James onlyist. Modern majority text people are King James onlyist. Your grandma sitting on the couch is a King James onlyist. You're a King James only. You know, it's like Oprah. You get a car, everyone gets the King James only label according to James White. But Jonathan Burris says I'm not King James only. I was like, hang on, we need to set up a debate
It
between
kind of
James
reminds
White.
me of an Up in the Club hip hop rap anthem. You know, there's my mama, there's my grandma, there's the real other people. You know, like, yeah.
All you King James only, put your hands in the air, like you know, all that. Everyone's putting their hands in the air. They were all King James only.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he was saying that I was triggered by his video because I did a usual 5-hour thing. He was like, you did 5 hours on.
Is he making a rule that losing your temper is bad? I'm just wondering because, like, maybe he protests a little too much.
Well, see, when he does videos about some guy who just wrote on his YouTube, that's fine. But when I do it about him, it's not fine. So, but anyway, so that's going to be something. He's made another 2 videos since then, and so I'm going to address them. But I also want to address what's been brought up in the Septuagint conference and sort of amalgamate them. I guess I've got a lot of work to do, a lot of videos to go through, and so it's going to be fun.
Well, it's one of those deals where, yeah, I kind of felt bad because I was like kind of, you know, taking them on for you for a while, but you know, you just kind of get a little tired of it, you know, and then I'd sit there and have to wait for him half the time because I know he didn't have like a fully developed idea, right? So like, you know, he started like this whole like, you know, bad hermeneutics. I was like, shouldn't you first make a series of good hermeneutics, and then you can tell me what bad hermeneutics is? Instead, I think he made 2 videos. I'm sitting there waiting a month or 2. If I were a guy who bet, I'm betting that he just dropped it, you know. But yeah, he his issues, you know, he's unstable. He's better educated than Mark is, but he's just not stable. Ortlund will be a breath of fresh air because he actually, you know, sounds erudite, you know, seems nice enough, you know, is irritating in the fact that what he's saying has some misconceptions and twist things. But otherwise, you know, I'll tell you what, it'd be a good review. Anyhow, let's see here. Let me go. We're just going to hit a couple of proof texts to kind of nail down this area. I don't want this to be the thrust of what we're doing, but you never know who's watching. So we want to make sure we're making these points clear to people. Otherwise, they're just going to say, well, there's some cranks. You know, they think this, that, or the other. All right, so Exodus chapter 31. I'll start at verse 14. Ye shall keep the Sabbath, therefore, for it is holy unto you. Every one that defileth it shall surely be put to death. For whosoever doeth any work thereon, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. What do you think, Nick? Is he serious about the Sabbath? Okay. Now remember that because we're moving on. Verse 15. 6 days may work be done, but in 7th is the Sabbath of rest. Holy to the Lord, whosoever doeth any work in the Sabbath day, he shall surely be put to death. Verse 16. Wherefore, children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations, for a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and thee and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Now, the law of the Sabbath is a sign. Now, this is important. The law of the Sabbath is a sign. And so, if the sign is of God's creation, should the creation be serious, or should it be something we're just goofing off about? You know, should you get to be pelted to death with giant stones because you just wanted to clean up your house? And yet, the point of pelting you to death was to tell us that there is a chiastic parallel that gives us a fun little description of salvation or creation. How would you feel if you were pelted to death about a concept that wasn't meant to be literal?
It's definitely literal. Like it clearly says in the context of saying that the Saturday Sabbath, the seventh day is a literal day. Then it says 6 days may work be done, but in the seventh is a Sabbath of rest, holy to the Lord. Whosoever doeth any work on the Sabbath day, he shall be surely put to death. And where was that? For in 6 days the Lord made the heaven and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested. So obviously God is saying they are literal 6 day period, 6 days of creation. And when you go through, Genesis 1, in our picture here, it's clear that it would say, you can just sort of pick it out here. The evening and the morning were the third day. The evening and the morning. It's very clear that it's not a long period of time. It's not 1,000 years. It's not 500 years. It's not 10 days. It's 1 day.
Well, and also we have the fact that he rested and was refreshed. This separates God from creation. Now, this is important. Theistic evolution teaches that creation is ongoing. If you truly believe in evolution, as devout a Christian you are, you have to assume, and there's a book, I've got it somewhere in the house, by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, and it's talking about theistic evolution. He was the modern-day father of theistic evolution, and basically, creation is ongoing for him. Also, he believes that creation is pantheistic. Why is that? Well, pantheism teaches that God is everything. Evolution teaches that nature does everything. So then God does everything through nature and not through the supernatural. So Pierre T. Deschardins, we'll just cut that short. He was a Jesuit priest. He was a Jesuit priest, and he ended up getting defrocked out of the Catholic Church. He also was implicated in the Piltdown Man story. Later on, they found out that Piltdown Man was a fraud, right? This mix between human and orangutan turned out to be a big fraud. But Desjardins, a lot of people have claimed that he actually was the one who forged the Piltdown Man. Okay? I'm not saying it's absolutely true. I'm just saying that's what they thought. Okay? So, basically, now the Pope has said that he was sorry to Pierre de Hildar de Chardin, gave him a good thumbs up in his memory. And he is also recognized as one of the fathers of the New Age religion. Okay? So that's kind of where that's all going. All right, so let's go ahead and look and consider some of these Bible versions and see what's happening with them. Do they affect Genesis any? I guess the first place to go is the New Revised Standard Version. The Bible that all the cool Muslims read. Because if it ain't Anglican, it converted to Islam. All right, can you help take us there? New Revised Standard Version, Genesis 1.
Okay, here we go.
And we'll go ahead and look at the full chapter.
I think that's it. Oh yeah, here we
All
go.
right.
It's got a parallel. Maybe I'll go parallel King James. No,
Okay.
it's going to a Norse language. Anyway, we've got it here.
No, the new Bible. The nurse. I don't know. I'm so focused on that Muppet. Yeah,
The Baker one.
yeah. Me. Yeah.
Maybe I'll just try and find something a little bit better. Bible Gateway. It's giving me the New Revised Standard Version uses edition, which I think is a Jennifer Knust one. But we don't really want that one. We just want. We don't want some. We just want a normal.
Better, right? Because I'm kind of wanting to hit a liberal Genesis 1 translation. So yeah, New Revised Standard, whatever, which one you like.
Okay, we'll go to this one.
Okay. All right. So first thing you see is when God began to create the heavens and the earth. What's the big difference in that first verse?
The in the beginning is missing the Bereshith.
So whenever God got around to it, then he started to be, then he began to create. This kind of gives you more of a pantheistic feel. And what they want to do, like the real liberals are not necessarily wanting to twist the Bible. They want to misrepresent the Bible. I don't know if it can really be fully explained that way, but basically, they're not concerned about making the Bible look better. They're really concerned about making the Bible look worse. So here they are, and they're saying, okay, when God began to create, as if, like, not only is there a definite time that God created, but also, is God even definite? Maybe this is something like Zeus. He's running around through the storm and okay, boom, ha ha. All right. There's a lot of that general feel as we're going to read through their version. So he began to create the heavens. Now, generally, if you have a literal translation of the Septuagint, you're going to have a plural heavens. If you have a literal translation of the Hebrew, you're going to have a singular heavens. 1917 Jewish Publication Society, of course, the King James, heck, even the Vulgate, or the Douay Rheims, I should say. All of those have heaven and earth and not heavens and earth. And that's going to make a doctrinal difference in the context. You might not notice it right then. But the heaven and the earth, then we have the separation of the waters from the waters. And then you'll have the space and the day. And then Genesis 2 will talk about when God created the heavens and the earth, plural. So you had one, then you have split, and then you have two. But in a lot of these groups that listen to the Septuagint, they want a plural heavens to begin with. After all, chapter 2 starts off with plural heavens. Why can't chapter 1 start that way? So when God began to create the heavens and the earth was complete chaos. Okay, so chaos and darkness. What is your feeling of those words? We look for poetic things. What imagery are you getting from chaos and darkness?
Yeah, well, I think, like you said, it's almost the picture of Zeus, or Thor, like riding on a cloud, and he's decided, okay, I'm going to create a world, sort of thing. He's busy with other things, but he's like, okay, well, I'm beginning to do this little project on the side, sort of thing.
All right, and then we go down a little further into verse 2, at least on the NRS. I know it's hard. Okay, here we go. And it says, so darkness is more literal in the King James Version, but darkness with the chaos kind of feels more poetic. Okay. And then it says the face of the deep, while a wind from God, versus in the King James, the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So we have a sense of theology that we're getting, but here, since they want to assume this to be more of a legend and not like a divine word, they want it to be more poetic. So now it's a wind from God. No theological implication. Swept over the face of the waters. Okay. Verse 3. All right. Let there be light, and then there was light. What was the end? I don't know if it says anything with that. Okay. All right. So that's fine. And then God saw the light was good, separated the light from the darkness. Whereas it says God divided the light from the darkness. I know it's not a big difference, but it is kind of showing a little bit more like the text in the King James is more specific, It says God, called the light day, and the darkness he called night. See here. Evening and morning, the first day. Now that's interesting because the next translation we're going to look at this in does something different. All right, and then verse 6. Okay, In Revised Standard Version, let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. Now, whereas in the King James says, let there be a firmament. Now, I will reveal my hand, and I do believe that there was something solid in the sky. Okay? But I do not think that dome was the appropriate word for that. And I think that's why they use dome for this translation. Because the word picture in your head when you say dome is that you have a dome over a flat circle surface. That's the common word picture. Okay, it's the dome. Whereas God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. And I believe the firmament would be the expanse of the sky. Okay? Now, I do believe that there would be something that I'd call a dome, or better yet, Josephus called it a crystalline. Okay? Or I'd call it a canopy. And that would have to do with those waters. But they're not actually wanting people to digest this as truth. They want this idea, oh, this is some legendary idea. Oh, this is like a big flat earth creation, mythology, etc. It doesn't have to be that way, but when you know who's actually producing this translation, that's exactly what it is. So, God made the dome and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome. And it was so. All right, so, so they've got the dome as something totally separate as a thing, you know. And the thing that's totally separate is the sky. You know, you have the first heaven, which, coming from a physics standpoint, I would call the first heaven the ether. And then you have the heaven of air, the sky. So the sky is air, nitrogen, all that kind of stuff. The other heaven is outer space. And, you know, as I said, space has a substance. That's why I'm starting to bring that up. Now, let's see here. Let's see here. We're at, okay, God called the dome sky, and there was evening, and there was morning the second day. By the way, the first 5 verses are all connected linguistically, which is a reason to reject the gap theory. Because that all completes the first day. It says, verse 8 in King James, and God called the firmament heaven. See, now, okay, fine, you know, the heaven. Firmament, heaven, everything's working. And the evening and the morning were the second day. So now he's created the heaven, and there's already the first heaven. So now, in Genesis chapter 2, we have God created the heavens and the earth. In verse 1, God created the heaven, meaning the sky or ether.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. And by the way, Tino showed me that some commentary earlier, and let's see here. Where are the waters, the firmament? Okay, we're not there yet. All right. Okay, verse 9. Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. And God said, let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, let the dry land appear, and it was so. Okay, fine. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that he gathered together were called seas, and God saw that it was good. And God called the dry land earth, and he gathered together the waters, called these seas, and God saw that it was good. All right. Verse 11, then God said, let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed in it. And it was so. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit yielding tree after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. What that is his kind is encapsulating that kind. So, in other words, in the King James, there is less wiggle room. Okay. Then verse 14, and God said, let there be lights in the dome, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years, and let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven. So now it's kind of like, well, the lights are in space. Okay. To divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, for days and years. I might as well just throw this in there now. As we're looking at Genesis 1, you know how there's always a big mystery about, well, how could God who created the sun on day 4 and there be light on day 1? Okay. Here's another one I'm going to hit you with. Okay. I'm one of those freaks. I'm what they call a geocentrist, okay? And that means that God created the earth, and since there was nothing for the earth to revolve around, nothing to make the earth spin, no sun for the earth to spin around, and no galaxies to affect it either, there was the earth. And then when God separated the light from the darkness, light in the universe is understood as plasma. The earth, or the universe, would then teem with the light of plasma. And then God would form from this light that was racing in a 24-hour cycle around the earth. It would be formed into the stars of the sky and the sun, and maybe some things generated as far as the moon, and planets and things like that. But basically, that's it. I mean, it's just that there's no contradiction at that point. So might as well, while we're going through Genesis 1, just kind of hint at that ahead of time. And let's see here. God, let's see. Okay, 14 of KJV, and God said, let their lights be in the firmament of heaven, and divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days. But if that energy is going around in 24-hour cycles, and it gets formed, and now you see the sun, it's the same cycle. That's why it's 6 days. So then we got verse 15, and let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. And let's see here. What does it say on the King James? I don't know why these aren't lined up that well. I don't think.
Yeah. Maybe what I'll do, I'll just quickly go to a better thing. I'll go to Bible Hub, and I'll just jump into the parallel Bible section there. So if we go to Genesis 1:1, that should be fine. Bible Hub parallel. Maybe NAS. It might show me a parallel here. It should, yeah. It's hard. Some of these programs are hard to navigate. Yeah, it's not really giving me a parallel there. So we'll just have to stick with this one, Matt. Sorry about that.
Okay. Let's see here. I'll just kind of focus on. I got a King James thing in front of me. I can just go over that, and then let's see here. Back to StreamYard. All right. So then we'll look at the NRSV. And God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and separate the light from darkness. And God saw it was good, and there was evening and morning the fourth day. And I think that the figurative language is they're trying to really make this fit more into poetry. Put it down just a little. So okay. Oh, nope.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll just jump out of these programs for a sec because I'm just I guess it's pretty hard to sort of navigate because it's an NASB thing. I'm used to just having King James and just reading that one, but because we want to have a parallel, maybe I'll have this one up the top, and that way we can just read through that one, and then I can just jump to the King James, which Genesis 1. Okay, so which verse were we up to, Matt? I think it was verse 17.
Yeah, I think we finished 17. Boy.
Okay. All right. Bit too big. There we go.
Okay. So, think about the governing the day and the night. Let me see over here. I'm going to check King James. By the way, if you use Bible Gateway, what is the difference between the King James Version and the Authorized King James Version?
I think one might be just an American edition. And so I have thought about that over time, but they do seem identical.
Like maybe an Oxford versus Cambridge, or
it could be that, yeah. I know on Bible Hub, the King James they have there is by Bible Protector, so he promotes the 1900 Pure Cambridge edition.
Okay.
So at the bottom of the page, it says it actually has a link to his website, Bible Protector.
All right, so King James says, and God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Now, the lesser light, I think there might be also like a verse out of Job or something that kind of hints that the lesser light is a reflection. Of course, we know the moon is a reflection. And lesser kind of could be in that way, but I kind of, you hate it because like sometimes you just can't research everything right then. You've seen it, you've heard it in the past. But yeah, so then so I mean, like, that would be a scientific fact, only they're just not going to look at it that way. They're going to say this is man's word, it's just poetry. And so some of these scientific facts get discarded because they're presented in a way to where, you just think they're full of errors. So they're kind of training people in this mentality. Like you're teaching that little kid, oh, the dinosaurs aren't in the Bible. And we'll hit, don't worry, we'll get to that. Yeah, I don't think I should have a lot of material, so we'll just kind of go through this, and I'm going to read the King James. Nick, just observe the NRSV and tell me if anything sticks out to you. So I'll start at 20. Let the waters bring forth abundantly moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. And let the earth bring forth living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing and beasts of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and the cattle after their kind. Everything that creepeth upon the earth hath his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and every fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and every living thing that moveth upon the earth. Okay. So did you notice anything from NRSV as you were looking?
I mean, most of it is just synonymous. I probably wouldn't use the word swarm, as usually that's a negative term, a swarm of bees or something like that. It doesn't seem like it's a positive term. So when it says they swarmed on the earth, the verse 21, with the waters swarmed according to their kind. Like they just swarm. Like a swarm seems more chaotic than. So that was just one thing I noticed. But apart from that, just going through and looking at the King James, a lot of it is just synonymous. Because I think it's very hard to even if they're paraphrasing, it's very hard to get away from the narrative here. It's quite distinct. So when it's brought forth abundantly, I would say that would be different than swarmed. Swarmed does have a negative connotation to it. So anyway, that's it. That's one of the things that I noticed. Apart from that, I mean, if this was like a commentary, you would go, okay. But they're saying it's a Bible. And some of it did read exactly the same as the King James. This is one thing that I noticed even Pastor Brett, who's in the house. Hey, Brett. He says that he has read the NASB and said that it does follow the King James closer than some of these other modern versions do. So, but you never really know until you just line them all up and have a good look at them.
Yeah.
And because some of them are fine for 2 or 3 verses, and then it will just throw you a curveball.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it'll just say something in the beginning of a chapter that sort of ruins the whole narrative, and they're fine with that, and then they don't ruin the narrative for another 20 verses, And so, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes they just get tired. Yeah. I'll attack you later. Now let's see here. Yeah, I mean, and unfortunately, I'm looking at that question. I mean, we know like Ruckman. I mean, it's a gap fact. Like, they get into it and they want to gnaw at that thing. But I don't know. Like my family came out of on my dad's side came out of Moody, and they just didn't. There's some issues that I feel like are more of a Dallas thing than a Moody thing, And so they weren't really into the gap theory. They believed in the 6 days creation. It wasn't something they were particularly interested in. But anyhow, let's see here. Yeah, let's do one more comparison with this time with the LSB. Now the LSB is endorsed by John MacArthur. He's a rock rib conservative. He's got it on his business card. I am a rock rib conservative. You can't go wrong with him because he's advertised. He's conservative as seen on TV. So no way. Nick, don't even think about it. John MacArthur would never do us wrong.
Yeah, it's sort of strange. Like I know a lot of people they jump out of the fry pan sometimes when they're in a group and there's a few things wrong, and they jump into MacArthurism, which I think, look, he says some interesting things, and like he will hold to a pre-trib position and all that, but he's all over the place with his bibliology, and I think the whole labeling system where you have James White with the LSB, and then obviously someone's throwing these people money to promote the Bible. And sometimes too, that they have a certain position, like James White will have a certain position in his book, in what he's said on his radio show for the last 20 years. And then you read the LSB and it's against his position. And you think, well, someone's just throwing him money just to promote it. It's a sad thing because they're not doing it because of a conviction. They're doing it because someone's throwing a bit of cash their way.
Well, it's kind of one of these things where with MacArthur, the problem is you're always going to, they've always set it up to compare him to every big megachurch leader. So when you look at the megachurch leaders in America, it's not really hard to kind of be more biblical than them. It's kind of like, there you go, right? I mean, whether it's Rick Warren or Joel Osteen or T.D. Jakes, you're going to look pretty conservative compared to all these guys. So that's where it becomes a problem because they can control. Okay, now I'll probably be talking a little bit, in a little bit about some of these other guys in the creationism movement. Now, this book right here, all right, John Tavares, this is the book that helped me at Boyce Bible College, which Moeller was president of the seminary the whole time. But they were basically teaching. Yeah, I got that somewhere. Basically, that helped me from the old earth that I was taught at the Bible college to get out of that. Okay. So I'm very appreciative of Jonathan Sarfati's work, but I'm just going to put it to you like this. This is a very good book taking on evolution. Okay, that's by Lee Strobel, The Case for the Creator. And let's see here. I got something else here. This is a very good book taking on evolution. Okay, what's the difference? Well, Sarfati is a young earther. Those are old earthers. But honestly, if you read those books, they do take on evolution. The issue is when you're reading a guy, you're reading a philosophy, but you're not getting the fully developed worldview. So a lot of times, especially young guys wanting to go into ministry, they cling on to whoever's the good worldview. And then you start to develop this personal sense of that person. Oh, I know so-and-so. Oh, they're great. They're this and they're that. You know, and before you know it, you become a follower. Okay? So if you're just listening to Joel Osteen or Rick Warren, yeah, you know, MacArthur's going to sound great. You know, like, wow, he's really like the Bible guy. Doesn't mean that he fully is. And yeah, I think that, you know, with the creation group, just like other neo-evangelicals, just like other, you know, neoconservative political people, they've got their good face, but it doesn't mean that they're hiding with that bad face too. So we'll talk about that a little bit down the road here. Okay, so
I might just jump in there, Matt, and just sort of talk about a few things, because in the chat, I know Christian McShaffrey brought up the Hashemayim plural in the Hebrew, and so this is usually why the modern Bibles have in the beginning God created the heavens plural and the earth, and so in the King James it has in the beginning God created the heaven singular and the earth. But when you look at the underlying word, it's Hashemayim or Shemayim, which has the I am at the end of the word, and so this makes it plural. But the thing is, you can also look at Elohim, which is used for singular God, but it's got a plural ending. And so I'll just read through a bit of an article I've got on my website. So critics charge that Shemayim is plural and should be translated as heavens, plural. In Hebrew, however, the plural form may identify size rather than number in certain contexts. Even in English, the plural form skies is used to refer to a large expanse in the atmosphere, which is technically just one sky, like the plane took to the skies, for example. Authoritative Jewish translations of the Tanakh translate Shemayim in Genesis 1:1 as singular heaven. The new JPS translation, according to the traditional Hebrew text, says heaven. The 1917 JPS translation says heaven, singular. Moreover, just a few verses later in Genesis 1:8, the New American Standard Bible and the ESV translate Shemayim as heaven, singular. The NIV translates it as sky, singular. So the translators of NASB, ESV, and NIV all agree that Shemaim can be translated in the singular. Whether the word should be translated in the singular or plural, it depends on the translator's assessment of the context. The King James Version translators translated Shemaim in Genesis 1:1 in the singular because the other heaven, the expanse of the sky, was not created until day 2. So there is a contextual definition and there's a lexical definition. So we can look up in a dictionary and go, oh, this is plural because of the ending, the im ending. But contextually, it becomes singular because the other heavens weren't in existence at that time. So hopefully that helps.
Okay. Just trying to figure out. So I'll be talking a little bit more about like the issue of the canopy and stuff. But wanted to hit because I don't want to let it go. Let's look at the LSB a little bit. Because I know we were going there and we kind of got sidetracked a little bit. What?
Yeah, that's what's your trophy in the background there, man?
Oh, okay. Back here. Oh,
yeah.
that's a karate trophy. I think I won it in weapons or something like that.
Okay.
And my trophies at last I lay down. It's kind of weird, but like my wife, like I've got these other ones over here. She decided to set that up for me. And those are mostly more sports, like football and wrestling. Got like 1 or 2 karate trophies, and they're really too big. I mean, they just it's like they just want to give away giant trophies, and it's like feels good at the moment, and then you're just kind of like, now what do I do with them, So okay, do you got the LSB? Okay,
there we go.
All right. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now this is obviously the supposed to be the major conservative modern translation. So we got the heavens issue there to start off with. At least it's not going in the direction we saw with the NRSB, but we'll see some things here. One that I didn't see in the NRSB. See if I can get there. Oh yeah. So when God called, this is verse 5. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and there was evening and there was morning one day. Okay. And let's see here. What's the and there is evening and morning the first day. So you see how that opens up a little bit on what the day could be. Let's see. Let's go down and see if we can see some other things popping up. Okay, the expanse in the midst of the waters. Okay, that's fine. Separate the waters from love. Expanse heaven. And I'm kind of wondering about these letters. What are they going to tell us?
Yeah, it's just a little pop-up. I'll just click on it. It says or firmament. Usually it's the King James reading.
Okay.
Or expanse or firmament. Expanse or firmament and expanse. Yeah, it's just all firmament.
Okay. So something interesting. I got a New American Standard Bible when I graduated from Boyce Bible College. It was nice, black leather and everything. And I noticed that like every reading where they thought, well, we didn't really give you the most literal meaning, and then they put the rest down there. I went through the book of Genesis and counted every reading that they noted was not the most literal, because New American Standard was supposed to be the most literal. Okay. It had this huge reputation. Okay. And 715 times in the book of Genesis, it put, well, not the most, not the most, not the most. So it's just something interesting to kind of put in there. Scroll down a little further. Obviously, we've gone over a lot of things. So That the waters within again one place. Let's see here. They're kind. It's good. Yeah, scroll down a little further on the King James. So, like, that's kind of interesting to me. Like, okay, there's his kind, whose seed is in itself. Oh, hold on, that's King James. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and they're like their kind. So they actually went a little gender inclusive with that.
Yeah, I think in 1611 there used to be a lot more of saying something like a spider with her hands sort of thing, or
Yeah.
like the English tended to put it like a gender upon certain things, and will say things like his, where I think the concept of it's because
You think of functional language?
yeah, I don't think it's really like I could be I would naturally default to it being the Hebrew saying his rather than being neutral, but that could be because there is a certain element of like the French language having a masculine feminine type of concept there.
Well, like, I'm not making it like a big dividing line. It's just the fact that, like, you know, what Tino was saying, that, like, this has more exclusivity in it. And, yeah, I was teasing. I don't think it's like the end of the world for them to kind of, say their instead of his. But I think there are some things that are kind of logically consistent about that. Seed being masculine, so then the plant seed is treated masculine. I see why they're doing that. Now, you brought up something, and I'm kind of, I probably should have had a conversation with Lydia about that, because I kind of felt like that goes into the territory of the undesigned coincidence, because we have bugs in Deuteronomy that are said to have 4 legs. And we're like, hold on, bugs don't have 4 legs, they got 6. And then when we see the spider in Proverbs having hands, then we're like, okay, when they use their top legs like hands, then they call them hands. That's functional language. Well, the fact that it was telling me that in Proverbs helped me figure it out in Deuteronomy. That's where I was kind of thinking maybe that's in the same area, but it's hard because you really got to learn her lingo first. Because there was like 8 or 9 concepts. So, yeah.
It's interesting because one of the things is like the Jehovah's Witnesses say that wisdom is Jesus in Proverbs 8. And I know a lot of Christians say this as well, because it's like, but what happens is if Christians use that for Jesus, it says that God acquired wisdom in the beginning. And so it's sort of like it's this created thing. It was something a bit like, Michael the Archangel, he was acquired in the beginning and he helped with creation and all this sort of stuff. But the next chapter calls wisdom a woman. And it says, wisdom is a woman in chapter 9. So it's, yeah, like you're saying, you got to put it in context of all the other places in the Bible, and specifically in Proverbs. When I know R.A. Torrey said that Proverbs 8 is talking about Jesus being wisdom there, but the very next chapter says wisdom's a woman, and so it's like, well, obviously that's not Jesus. And so, it's very good to go through and just check these things with the rest of the Bible.
So let's go ahead and do Bible Gateway, and when I want to do some word searches, okay? First one we'll do dragon.
Okay. So you want me to just jump up the top here and just type in in Legacy Standard Bible or King James or?
Like, we'll do King James and then we can compare to whatever.
Okay. Maybe there might be. I might be able to pull up a better argument. I'll just quickly go to Will Kinney's material because I know he's done articles on this and he'll have comparison lists, so it might be a little bit easier just for the navigation of everything. Will Kinney, brand plucked. .com, and I'll just check his KJV articles. And we're looking at Dragon. Okay, here we go.
There's an area I know I'm going to disagree with him on, but he had brought up something.
Satyrs, cockatrice. Well, I actually disagree with Will with the satyrs, where I do think it's just a goat, where he seemed to think it was like a devil goat, some sort of demon. In the debate that he had with TurretinFan,
yeah, I
listened through that and I was just sort of like, no, I just see it as a goat. I don't see it as a full half demon, half, He kept going to the dictionary and talking about what the dictionary said about it. And I was in disagreement with him, but I thought, well, that's something that I should really write about. But my first initial reaction was, no, I'm not really sure about that. And so I didn't think it was a battleground to die on sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to hate on him about it, but yeah, I just know it, like, I don't know if his stuff will be where I'm going. But generally, I'm just like, how many times does the King James? Well, let's see here. Yeah, there's a lot of different things there. Oh, this is weird because when I'm looking, I'm using my mouse, but you got your mouse, so it's like confusing my head.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've got a couple here that says, "In the day the Lord will punish Leviathan, that fleeing serpent, with his fierce and great mighty sword, even Leviathan, that twisted serpent, he will kill the dragon who lives in the sea."
Yeah.
So that's Isaiah. So now I can look up this one here, and I'll just go to like Bible Hub, which has all of them in a row, and that way now we can compare it. Okay. The monster in the NIV, the ESV has the dragon. Okay. The Berean has the dragon. There's a King James dragon. The New King James has the reptile. NASB has the dragon. Okay, that's okay. Legacy Standard Bible has the dragon. Okay, so it's mostly just the NIV that is amplified has the dragon. Slay the monster. This CSB Holman's has the monster. American Standard Version, the monster. Dragon, Aramaic Bible. So yeah, I don't think there's that much difference there, but that's the NIV has monster there instead of the dragon.
Okay, what I was wanting to do, I was wanting to show you how many times they're referenced. That's why I was wanting you to go through Bible Gateway and just look up this word and see where it's at.
Maybe you can share your screen there, Matt, because it's sort of, I guess, in a way, like Bible Gateway is a pretty hard thing to just navigate for me.
Okay.
And so.
All right, I'll just do that. Let's see here. I'm using authorized because it just sounds better.
Yeah.
And
it's strange. That's one of the arguments against the King James. Oh, it was never authorized. It's like, it's called the King James. What did he have to write a letter saying?
He authorized the production, which is what you really want. And then as far as who gets it, it should be the church who decides that this is the one we want. And that's kind of what happened. Anyhow, in the authorized King James Version, it has 34 references to dragon. Now, I'm going to switch that. We were talking about legacy. The legacy has 17, 3 in the Old Testament, 14 in Revelation. So, all of the usage in legacy was just the visions in Revelation, basically. It sounded like it was at least halfway okay, but instead, no. And you got 12 in Revelation in the King James, and then you got 22. Deuteronomy, Nehemiah, Job, Psalms, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Micah, Malachi. But, there's others. Of course, we spoke about Leviathan. And Leviathan was connected to the sea. But our buddy, what was his name? He doesn't have enough faith to be an atheist guy. The apologist we first listened to.
Kent Hovind, is it?
No.
Yeah, sorry. No, you're talking about
dinosaurs aren't in the Bible. Yeah.
Was that Frank Turek?
Frank Turek. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Heck, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So Frank Turek, all of a sudden, he's talking about how they're land animals, right? It's what? There are dinosaurs that are in the water, and there are dragons that are in the water. So it's got 5 references: Job, Psalms, and Isaiah for Leviathan. And then you have the cockatrice. So, hold on. Of course, it's not in, LSB, and probably not in very many outside this. I don't want to go too deep as far as trying to figure out where cockatrice is in all the versions. 3 in Isaiah, 1 in Jeremiah. And now, the way he had it, it almost kind of sounded like cockatrice is just a serpent, even though we have serpents and snakes and stuff. But in Isaiah 14:29, it says, "Rejoice not, thou whole Palestina, because the root of him that smote thee is broken, for out of the serpent his root shall come forth a cockatrice, and whose fruit shall be a fiery flying serpent." I'm kind of wondering if that is the pterodactyl / ropin. I've been watching this YouTube channel called Protect Animal Life. And you live in Australia, so you might have some superior knowledge to me. But have you heard about the legends of, flying reptiles / I think they're calling them ropin, but they're like pterodactyls, only small. Have you heard legends of animals like that in Papua New Guinea?
Not really, no. I haven't really heard about that one. I know Kent Hovind talks sometimes about, whispers of animals in Africa and Papua New Guinea and things like that. But I haven't really followed that.
Okay. So the guy's channel is called Protect Animal Life, and it's now he's got interviews with people from Papua New Guinea. He's got interviews with a lot of people claim to see this stuff. And yeah, you know, this is not going to be your, here's my peer-reviewed proof of something, okay? But basically, he's claiming that there's, he's got lots of testimonies. He's also got photographs, video footage, and apparently a couple biologists and stuff that have claimed to see some of these pterodactyls. And, you know, if the guy's wrong, it still makes a really good question over what is extinct and what is not extinct. And how do you prove it? Because as I said, if we go with the convention of, oh no, the dinosaurs are extinct, therefore the pterodactyls are extinct, therefore you're just a nutcase. Well, the nutcase has produced people from different walks of life in different countries. He's produced a couple videos. He's produced a couple, or he's found different photographs and videos, stuff like that, and some reputation. So if that's still, and it still could be, maybe he's still a nutcase, don't get me wrong, but what kind of epistemic proof do we have to say, okay, here's exactly the way things are? You know, how do we know that all reptiles are 70 million years old? You know, how do we really know that there's an animal that's absolutely extinct? Maybe they're just partially extinct. You know, you remember the dodo bird?
Yeah.
You might remember the dodo bird, but you know what I'm talking about.
I'm not that old.
Could there be a dodo that we just don't see? You know, that's living in an island somewhere, or maybe, you know, some tropical desert or something, and it's just not places that we go to. You know, and a lot of times we get it wrong on who's extinct and who ain't. And so I think that Kent had a good point talking about this, because a lot of the assumptions are really just reinforced. Because if you saw a picture of a dinosaur, what would you think? You would think it's probably a robot, it's probably fake, it's probably Hollywood. So, like, you know, when you see the flat earthers and they say, oh, well, that moon landing was faked. Well, I mean, it's the same thing. It's just like, you know, okay, I've got a skeptical view. But we know that these animals, with a shorter time frame, that they are around. You know, they may not be around right now, but then again, do we really, really, really know? You know, maybe it's just, you know, some ideas there. Okay, so we also talk about the behemoth. Okay, Job chapter 40. Now, this has always been a special thing to me. You know, I went to Bible camp, and there was a pastor, David Price, kind of reminded me of John Candy for some reason. And he told us about the behemoth and Leviathan. And it kept with me. And I always had a nagging suspicion ever since. But you look at these animals. Behold the behemoth. This is 40 verse 15 of Job. Which I made thee, he eateth grass like an ox. Lo, now his strength is in his loins, and the force is the navel of his belly. So, you know, you think about those tight abs, you know. He moveth his tail like a cedar. Okay. I got to go to the zoo, and they had a cedar of Lebanon there. I think it's probably about 40 feet, you know, and it just like looks like a telephone pole, but it's a tree. And So you think, okay, this animal has incredible abs, has a tail like a cedar, like a giant tree. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. His bones are as strong as pieces of brass. Okay, you think about how muscular a piece of brass could be. And then you hear what the new translations say. So let's see, like Job chapter 40 with the LSB, with the rock rib John MacArthur. He's not gonna go wrong as a pure creationist. He's gonna get this one right. So let's look at LSB Job chapter 40. And it's going to give us the notes on there because it's so scholarly.
Okay, I'll just go to the LSB. Here we go.
You scroll down a little bit. Oh, yeah. Yeah, keep on scrolling down. Trying to see where the notes are because I saw the notes.
Oh, yeah. I think
it's not on
you
there.
have to have the whole chapter, I think. So I'll just go for full chapter.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then...
Oh, you got NIV.
Oh, actually, maybe... Oh, yeah, that's gone.
I mean, it's going to have it on the NIV, no doubt.
There we go. Yeah, it's got these little pop-up ones here. So...
Okay. Now that's Lexham.
So 15 says...
You got the Lexham.
Yes. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, there we
Wrong.
go. There you go. Okay.
So 15 here as behemoth, as some interpret it as a hippopotamus.
Tail like a cedar, those iron fat legs, and that navel. What a navel that shakes like Santa Claus. It's just funny because they're still promoting these ideas. Like, no, that hippo does not have a tail like a cedar. He doesn't have power in his abdomen. He's got fat. He doesn't have, limbs of steel. And so this is kind of what we have to deal with sometimes, is that they're working against creation. But these are the new translations. Now,
The King James says tail like a cedar. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll just get a picture of a hippopotamus. And let's look at the tail, because if you're a little kid, you'd think, wow, this has got a tail like a cedar. There you go.
yeah, there you go.
Oh,
It's
actually,
like
that'll
tail
ruin
like
my
the
bandwidth,
leaf off
but,
the cedar.
that's not really a cedar, is it?
Yeah, that's the leaf off the cedar.
Cedar tree. Okay. Cedar tree trunk. Oops. Yeah. So just looking at some of the images of a cedar tree, we had a bunch of cedar trees at the back of our house, and they would have been 15 foot across, and we had to cut down 8 of them when I was a kid, and we had firewood forever. There was so much wood there.
That's
And
awesome.
we're talking, they were like this big, and having a tail, like even some of the branches were as big as a normal tree, just some of the branches. And so, how can the LSB say its behemoth is a hippopotamus?
Yeah. And, this is by young earther John MacArthur. If you went, and I know you probably won't be going soon, but if you go to the Ark Encounter, there's like little scripts and stuff. Like they'll have Ray Comfort or John MacArthur preaching something. I think they had John MacArthur preach the gospel or something. And it's like, yeah, there were dragons in the well, maybe not so much. Yeah, these are the same guys, and like you have to understand, we talked about Henry Morris, and Henry Morris, you know, he was either leaning towards the right text family or eventually becoming King James only by the end of his life. Well, you know, look at what happened afterwards, okay? So that's creation, what was it? Because I get it mixed up because you had the creation research thing, ICR, because the Institute of Creation Research. You had them out there, and they did one good thing, and they made sure that everybody would stick to the Masoretic text. Thank the Lord, because you would have had a different, you know, creationism and different set of theology and everything going along with that. But going back to it, you know, these guys did not want anything to do with the King James. They did not want to take on textual criticism. And so I met Ken Ham around 2003 or 4. And at the time, he did not have an entourage. I met him, I think it was somewhere around Corbin, Kentucky. He was approachable. He's a real nice guy. And I met some of the other creation scientists, and it was cool. You know, I was having worship next to David Minton. By the way, he's a Lutheran. He passed away, but really did a lot of good work talking about anthropology and showing how there's no link and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, those are good old days for me. But I saw him a second time around 2006. And at this point, I'm studying, you know, for my master's degree. I'm starting to see the influence of evolution on the textual criticism. And I'm like, you know, hey, you know, remember me? You know, I forget if he said he remembered me or not. But he was giving a speech for a homeschool convention that was at the home church. It was a mega church that I was going to at the time. But my home church was a mega church, and he was basically speaking there on a weekday for the homeschool group. And, you know, I asked him about that, and he looked at me like I was nuts. And I also remember talking about Pierre Teilhard de Chardin and writing an article and sending it down to Australia. And, you know, like, yeah, the creation guys are going to get my article. And, you know, the thing that hurt about that was that I spent $10. I didn't have a whole lot of money because I was going to school. But I spent $10 writing the article, and they don't give you an answer. They don't, you know, it'd be one thing if they say we reject it because they don't even tell you that. You just pack your money and there you're going. But nevertheless, he was probably getting closer to eventually leaving your home for my home, you know, here in Kentucky. And when they got their museum together, I remember doing a little creation conference at the church I was youth pastoring and sending money to the building of the Creation Museum. And then, like, let's say about 5-10 years later, they have the Ark Encounter. And I forget if they had this at the Creation Museum, but they do have a Bible version exhibit at the Ark Encounter. And I could not find the King James Bible in the Bible Museum exhibit.
Wow.
Yeah. They just, you know, oh, yeah, the Geneva was there. The Tyndale was there. Yeah, today we have the NIV, the RSV. Look, here's an ancient mason. You know, here's the Codex Sinaiticus, you know, a copy. But, you know, it's just like, wow, you know. So they, you know, I know they're good guys in a lot of ways. I still support their ministries, you know, at times. But they're the bad guys here, okay? Jonathan Sarfati, he is one of the best at the philosophical level. Okay, he puts a succinct, straightforward, here's the arguments case in general for creation evolution. And I can't take that away from him. But when you get to any other issue, he basically plays the Inquisitor. Okay. None of your, I know you like him. Okay. I like him too. I've even interacted with him. We had him on a show when he was advertising Evolution's Achilles Heels and stuff. So he knows me. Okay. Love the guy. All right. I know you love him too, but you know what? Don't tell him about the King James. Then you're a bad Sayers. Okay. Just tell him stuff he likes, and these other ideas that what I call independent creationism, you see, if you're really into science has to be free. You have to ask questions and you have to pursue things that might be wrong. That's how you learn. You debunk things. And so you have to come up with a new idea and debunk it. The difference between what we saw in the era of ICR, I just keep on remembering, there's like a Bible Answer Man thing, and it just had similar things. But ICR, what they had was they hired Christians who were scientists. The shift happened with AIG, where they started focusing on pastors. I think I'd be ecstatic about this because I'm a pastor who likes this stuff, right? But the problem is that they then want to herd people into a camp. And you're not doing science that way. You've got to ask the tough questions, and you got to let people, think about this stuff. So, what was it? Yeah, he says, Sarfati is a genius in some topics. I agree. But when it comes to what Scripture says, he's still willingly ignorant. Some of this stuff goes there because why? Because what he's training to do, okay, I'll tell you this. He's a chess player. And I mean, he's good. Okay. I've seen him take like 8 to 16 people on at the same time. Okay. Championship chess player. I'm a checker player. I don't get in tournaments. I don't know if tournaments exist, but I can beat on expert level every day of the week. I will beat the expert level on checkers and the hard level, which is supposed to be easier, but seems to be harder. But basically, as a chess player, of these different options and you are focused on what is going to work. And so he's going to focus on the arguments that will work. And anything where you're going out on a limb, he doesn't want to do. But if you're going to do science, you got to go out on a limb. I mean, that's just the end-all be-all. And so this is where he's going to allow for that. Sometimes I've seen him do some things that are, when we talk about the issue of Catholicism, he's going to be more ecumenically minded than me. And so I'm like, ugh. I'll give my case for a couple of these things in a minute. But he does have a good side that I don't want to ignore. And that is that he's got good pragmatics. Ironically, he likes me on politics. So, if I started talking about the canopy theory, he'd blow a gasket. But when it comes to, I'll say something on politics, and, he's liking all my Facebook posts. And so, that's cool. So I'll make my case there in a minute. But in general, the creationists that we have in the mainstream cut off corners, and they're really hurting a lot of real progress because they think that they've kind of done away with the shame. And none of these guys do away with the shame. That's the problem. You know, do you think that since William Lane Craig thinks that young earth creationism is an embarrassment, do you think that's made him cool now with the atheists? Are you certain, Bill? No! No, I'm not cool. No, you're not. They get all the big-time atheists to debate them because the big-time atheists humiliate them. And there are some things that when you get deep into it, you start seeing the problems. When they can say that I just said that I was a geocentrist, and they can say, oh, that's terrible, da-da-da-da. I'm going to say, look, you believe in an old earth. You know why? Because you believe in a 25 million year old Milky Way galaxy. Because you say that since the earth is spinning around the sun and that the sun is spinning around the Milky Way, that it's 225 million years. Because how can you get the diameter right? You can't even get 1% out of a million years. The earth is not going to go around the Milky Way even 1% in a million years. But you're saying it's 6,000 years. Okay? Oops. You know, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get, you know, but basically, I get aggravated because, like, I'm dealing with some real issues. I'm working out these problems. With that issue particularly, yes, it has a lot of, like, political thinking factor, which anathematizes it, but actually, it answers all the questions. It is crazy. I'm going to go ahead and show you something here. This is, I'm putting this in part of my blog book where I did. And, you know, most of the stuff is kind of straightforward because I'm talking about the existence of God. But it's just so strong in argument. It is unearthly strong. And you're thinking like, well, how could this be? But defense of the Neo-Tychonian system. Now, I know that, like, the real problem is people don't think it's scientific. So I'm not even going to address the scripture or the hundreds of, you know, church preachers who all agreed with it unanimously whenever they interpreted the Bible. But let me just read some of what these atheists have said. So let me scroll down. I got a lot to scroll through, but okay. This is Fred Hoyle, okay? He's the guy who coined the term Big Bang Theory. He was actually a steady state theorist and an atheist till the very end of his life. He said, today we cannot say that the Copernican theory is right and the Ptolemaic theory is wrong in any meaningful sense. The two theories, which improve by adding terms involving the square of the higher powers of the eccentricities of the planetary orbits, are physically equivalent to another. Okay, in other words, how do you know what's north of the universe? How do you know what's up? How do you know what's down? If you're just an orb in space, how do you really know what's up or down or left or right? So he says something else, but I'm going to skip down. Now, here's a guy you're going to think that here's a raving fundamentalist. And he might be a raving fundamentalist, but you would know him as Bertrand Russell in A History of Western Thought. He says this, page 217, if there was anything to the merit of the Copernican hypothesis, is not truth, but simplicity. In view of the relativity of motion, no question of truth is involved. I'll try to say that a little faster. if there was anything to the merit of the Copernican hypothesis, is not truth, but simplicity. In view of the relativity of motion, no question of truth is involved. Now, this is a big thing. Like, we don't understand that, like, there is no, like, absolute scientific consensus that the sun is the center of the universe, or that we can find the center of the universe. This is Hans Reichenbach, Philosophy of Space and Time. He says, the Copernican conception is indeed simpler, but this does not make it any truer, since the simplicity is descriptive. One description may be simplest for some phenomenon, while a different description may be simplest for others, but no simplest description is distinguished from other descriptions with regard to truth. The concept of truth does not apply here, since we are dealing with definitions. And let me find some more famous guys, because I know that might go over people's heads. All right, I've got Ernst Mach. If y'all remember Mach's principle, and, you know, if you have those fast jets, they can go Mach 1 through Mach 6. He wrote this: obviously, it matters little if we think of the Earth as turning about on its axis, or if we view it as at rest while the fixed stars revolve around it. Geometrically, these are exactly the same case of a relative rotation of the Earth and the fixed stars with respect to one another. All the masses, all velocities, thus all forces are relative. There is no one basis for us to decide between relative and absolute motion. I'm going to cut that off. There's a lot more that he says there, but I'm just trying to get people the basic idea. And Nick, have you ever heard of a scientist? He went by this name, Stephen Hawking. You ever heard of him?
The guy who got busted going to Epstein Island.
Yeah, there you go. I don't know if he did or not, because you know, he was not supposed to walk, but oh well. Yeah, so Stephen Hawking, people thought he was like the smartest guy in the world. He says, now at first sight, all this evidence that the universe looks the same, whichever direction we look in, might seem to suggest that there is something special about our place in the universe. In particular, it might seem that if we observe all other galaxies to be moving away from us, then we must be at the center of the universe. There is, however, an alternative explanation. The universe might look the same in every direction as seen from any other galaxy. This, as we have seen, was Friedman's second assumption. We have no scientific evidence for or against this assumption. We believe it only on the grounds of modesty. It would be most remarkable if the universe looked the same in every direction around us, but not around other points in the universe. That was A Brief History of Time, Chapter 3. And let's see here. Yeah, I've got a lot of stuff on this. Let me... Oh, yeah, there's one thing I wanted to kind of hit because it just makes the point, if you remember some of these quotes. We got 5 experiments in physics that point to this, the geocentricity as well. One good thing is that, because I know that this is just too long a presentation to give in one day, but something really cool is Danny Faulkner. He wrote a book debunking the flat earth theory, but he made a careful point to say that the geocentric creationist position is a legitimate position. He said he would not take it, but he said that, in fact, there's a scientist, Gerardus Bell, and I'm reading through things I got to look see. Oh, yeah. Okay. Gerardus Bell, he is a doctorate. He's probably passed on since now, but he was a trained doctor in astronomy, and Danny Faulkner thought a lot of him. Also, Dwayne Gish was really impressed by a book by Malcolm Bowden, which also expressed geocentricity. That's a book called True Science Explains the Bible. So there's a lot of legitimacy there. And let me see that last part. I got to find to show you because that really seals the deal for me. As far as like with this amount of time anyway. This is like the NASA. NASA has a way of finding objects and navigating through space. And they call this the, let's see. I'm looking for it as I'm trying to think of it at the same time. Oh, okay. Heck on it. What was it? Ooh. So what it is like Earth-centered inertial framework. There we go. Okay. So NASA has this process called an Earth-centered inertial framework. And when they do like a NASA space launch, they start off with the idea of the Earth at rest and then going wherever they need to go in space from the position of the Earth at rest, not moving at all. So why would they do that? Because it is simpler. Why did they want the universe to be ordered in heliocentricity? What was the big deal? What won the day? Because they said that the universe with the Earth revolving around the sun was simpler. Now technology is advanced. It's not simpler. They don't want to tell you that, but they are operating under a geocentric universe. Heck, our clocks are based off the early clocks, which were geocentric. Trying to think, that might be the ancient geocentric. Like I go under Neo-Tychonian geocentricity, which still has the sun gravitating all the planets around it and then spinning around us. The idea is that the universe has its own gravity field. It's got electromagnetic energy too. But all this energy of the universe is what's turning the sun. So the Earth is not doing anything to the sun. It is the star field. And in my system, the electromagnetic energy of the stars. So that is the first area of independent creationism. Independent creationism, just like independent Baptist, should mean that we're independent. So there are different guys. Tino, my buddy, he's a geocentrist. He does not believe in the canopy theory. Okay. Ken Hovind believes in the canopy theory. He's not a geocentrist. I'm going to talk about some other guys. Some guys were famous. Some guys weren't. I'll go ahead and talk about the canopy just because we are at a level where I feel like I've given an explanation for what would be the geocentricity, except for the fact that there are verses in the Bible that say the earth does not move. There are verses in the Bible that say the sun moves. They say the stars move. the moon moves, and the wind moves. Okay? The answer to that is, well, it's figurative language. But there's no verse in the Bible that says that the earth is spinning around 1,500 kilometers a minute or an hour. I think I got it down to about like the earth is moving about 9 million miles an hour when you get the earth spinning around its own axis, spinning around the sun, spinning around the Milky Way, and then moving 800 million light years, in another direction that we haven't fully figured out yet. But nevertheless, also when we look at the long day in Joshua points, hey, sun, stop. Hey, moon, stop. It's like, well, if God had him stop the moon and stop the sun, but the earth is spinning around, that would have messed things up. And how is he telling them instead of earth to stop? So, now, a good book dealing with by the way, I have a feeling on the tea leaves. Nick, I bet you're not a canopy theorist.
In a sense of, Ken Hovine talking about a canopy that was, full of water and sort of collapsed during the global flood.
Yeah. Okay. That's not the one, but that is a good example. Now, his canopy theory was based off the work of Walt Brown, who did not believe in the canopy theory. But I'm glad you brought up I'm glad you brought that up because I also need to talk about Walt Brown after I get done with this guy, okay? The canopy theory has several different versions. And so a lot of people, they hear one version and, then they'll give their opinion. That's it. So, this was very popular in the day when Henry Morris had his canopy theory, which he adjusted. First, he had a big canopy of vapor. Then he had it segregated into clouds. But he still had some trouble with it. Meanwhile, what Walt Brown did, he said, look, let's get rid of the canopy theory, okay? He said, look, we've got these subterranean waters deep underneath the Earth's crust. Walt Brown was a genius. He graduated from MIT with a doctorate, and he was a West Point grad, which that means he was a military guy. And the military actually gave him a full scholarship to get his MIT doctorate. He studied all sorts of sciences, and geology was the last of them. A lot of the geologists followed the Charles Lyell uniformitarian system, which helped back up evolution. But he was out there, he was studying oceanography. He was studying all sorts of other sciences so that he could put it together in a better way. So he thought about, what about when the Bible says the fountains of the great deep? Maybe there's something deep underneath the surface, miles down, 12, 15 miles deep, subterranean waters. Ken Hovind loved it and said, I'm with this guy. But he also believed in the canopy theory. And so he said, Walt, he said, can't we just fit a little canopy? And Walt Brown was like, well, it would have to be a very thin canopy. Like 2 or 3 fingers thick, and that's it. And so Ken Hovind was like, you betcha. Okay. Ken Hovind is a great debater. He's taken everybody on. Some of the toughest guys around, he's debating them. I think prison hurt him. I think he had to get over a whole lot, and he's still got issues, but he's still a good debater. Excuse me. But I think that he was in the right direction, but he didn't quite understand the system well, which is funny because he said the same thing about his son Eric. And Eric, you're a nice guy, but I agree, you're not a deep scientist. Anyhow, I interviewed both of them at one point, but nevertheless, you have to have something more than that. So I can understand why that doesn't work. But I found different models. One, unfortunately, I couldn't get deep into because the guy passed away. But a guy named Gerard Boudreau, he was using a canopy with different chemicals involved. And he would hang out with the guy, Carl Baugh, with the Creation Evidence Museum. So you might be able to find him through there, but he passed away a few years ago. Anyway, this is a guy I came across. Okay, this is Troy Lawrence. And Dr. Troy Lawrence, I think he's a, what's the type of doctor? Well, you might say it on here. Okay. I'll get it wrong. I'm going to say it's something like an endocrinologist, or maybe, like he was what's the type of doctor that deals with your teeth, but they're not a dentist, but they're something that deals with the teeth.
I'm gonna have to Google that one.
Okay, that's fine. But he is a legitimate doctor, and he wrote this book, Origins: The Origin of Matter, Space, Time, and Life. He even signed it for me. What a great guy! So he put like, it's over 400 pages, and just like in the beginning, Walt Brown's book, they go through all the sciences. They're putting their heart and soul into this stuff and really answering those questions for anybody, maybe their loved ones. And so Troy, he has a canopy theory, and he does a lot of focus on mathematics. And he did something completely different from what the whole mainstream was doing. Because they would say, Jonathan Sarfati is going to tell you, he's like, look, there's too much, you get a canopy there, there's going to be too much weight and pressure from the gravity. It's going to crush everything. What Troy did was, instead of having a small canopy, he got a big canopy. You think, what? Oh, now he's just being a snot. How dare you with your big, bad canopy? Okay. But what he's doing is that he's taking the polar ice caps and saying that they were the canopy. And that's 4.45 quadrillion tons. Okay. Now, we're thinking, okay, now you're nuts. What on earth? Well, here's the interesting thing about it. Where does, in modern physics, where do we think our gravity is coming from?
Well, I guess, it comes from the matter. From matter, anything that has matter has gravity.
Yes, the mass. Okay, the mass comes together, and the way I kind of think of it is like, you have a huge mass, you got a lot of electrons, and that electron energy is a microscopic electromagnetism that becomes gravity. Okay, that's my theory on it. So if we take a huge amount off of the Earth, like 4.45, could be 445, quadrillion tons, then is the Earth going to have more or less gravity?
If we take it off, it's going to have less gravity.
Yes. So all of a sudden the gravity is less and you have buoyancy. Now, the spin of the Earth, Troy is not a geocentrist. That's fine because we're independent, okay? He's actually strongly, like he really has a lot of heliocentricity in his mindset. And so he's functioning that way and talking about the spin of the Earth. But it would do different in my system. So my system would look at what he calls centripetal force, but what I have to call centrifugal force. Because with him, it's going around externally. But with me, it's coming out. Okay? So just like when you're driving a flat tire, but you still, you don't want to be stuck on the road. So you're driving hard on that flat tire, centrifugal force puffs it up and keeps it levitated, even though there's a hole in it. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm.
Okay. So the centrifugal force would be pushing out, and the spinning universe would be operating a lot like a whirlpool. It's not what's going on in the center. It's going around the center. And so it's pulling. And the stars not only have gravitational energy, but they have electromagnetic energy. So that would be why you would be able to hold that up. Also, let me hit this one famous verse real quick. Job 37. (37:18), and it says that, hast thou with him spread out the sky, which is strong, and as a molten looking glass. Now, where is this metallic thing? Okay, well, in my studies, if you freeze hydrogen to the level it is where it's at the temperature of space, negative 300 degrees Celsius, then it will take on electromagnetic qualities. So the hydrogen would dissipate from that frozen air and the water. And so at the bottom, you have all this hydrogen frozen to where it has that feel of electromagnetic plate. Now, you have other factors. You've got the moon and you've got the sun, which both pull on the gravity of the area, and they would basically churn it. And then you would have water swirling around the top. So the canopy would basically be a place of refreshment as, all the particles are churning and, the air is kind of coming in and out, and yet you are blocking the ultraviolet radiation that is usually damaging to the animals below. And meanwhile, the buoyancy of the earth is much more thick, which explains why you have giant pterodactyls which cannot physically fly in today's atmosphere. You have sources of air that have 50% more oxygen than what we have today. They found it in the Arctic and they found it in Ambien. And so these ancient ambient and ancient ice cores point to this higher level of oxygen. And so now you have an environment that does have less radiation, more oxygen, and just generally helps out with the environment more. Now, let's see here. Yeah, so Troy's got a lot of good stuff. and you got a lot of good information in between. The best thing is both him and Walt Brown are doing research on their own. They're not just listening and parroting everything. That's our biggest problem. We parrot the best arguments until they're done to death, and people are A, inoculated, and B, know the best weaknesses to deal with them.
Mm.
So they put a lot of time doing that. Well, my understanding of the universe also is electric. Now, I talked about the ether at the beginning, and the ether is the substance of space. There was a very important experiment called the Michelson-Morley experiment, and it was supposed to put the cherry on top of Newtonian physics and basically complete science. Now, hallelujah, it's revelation. Well, Newton, like everybody else in the world, believed that outer space had a substance. And he decided to do this experiment. Or not Newton, what am I saying? Yeah, Newton believed that, but Michelson-Morley decided to do this experiment. One of them was in Paris. The other one was in Lansing, Michigan. And they shot 2 lasers, okay? And they hit the exact same spot on the moon with their 2 lasers. And then those 2 lasers would then hit the opposite laboratories. So Lansing would hit Paris, and Paris would hit Lansing. And since space has a substance, it would be able to capture the substance of space, and there would be enough substance to prove that Earth was spinning around and that the Earth was spinning around the sun. Obviously. Problem. It was very close to 0. They were not prepared for that. So you had a guy named Lorenz started working on things, and then there was a guy we know today as Einstein. Einstein knew he would have to give up something. Either there is no substance of space, or the Earth is not moving around the sun. Now, there's a guy named Dayton Miller. Eventually, he would retest it and calibrate it. And eventually, he got it to where he could explain the spin that was around the Earth. But he could not explain that there was no spin around the sun. So, Einstein decided to give up on the substance of space, the ether. He called it space-time. Well, there wasn't a geocentricity community to get mad, but there was an electromagnetic community to get mad. And one of the biggest guys in the electric community was a guy named Nikola Tesla. You might think about the car, the Tesla. Nikola Tesla shredded Einstein in the New York Times for his special theory of relativity. It wasn't so special to Tesla. Why? Because electricity needs a medium. To get the electricity of the stars to the Earth, you have to have a medium, and a medium for space. Einstein was saying that there wasn't any. So the electromagnetic community went nuts. Then Einstein recanted, and he came up with a new theory, the general theory of relativity. And in the general theory, he came up with space-time, which is another word for the ether. Now, he didn't do away with special relativity. He still said it's all a big vacuum. But he had to have something in there. And then later on, they had to have other substances. So then when they started developing the Big Bang Theory, they came up with dark matter. But dark matter didn't matter enough. So they came up with dark energy. And they still had space-time. And then they would have dark photons and other things that they would make ad hoc. Ad hoc means that you didn't use your experiments. You didn't prove it with evidence. You just came up with it as a fudge factor. So now that I flipped this, and I've already made the big sacrifice of geocentricity, I believe that the primary force of the universe is not gravity, but electric or electromagnetic energy. Now, electromagnetic energy is stronger than gravitational energy. Guess how much? 10 to the 36th power greater. All of a sudden, you have a lot of power to work with in your equations. So now the universe is fully energized, and now it's moving around. And the Earth has this special place. Why would the Earth have this special place? Because the Earth is special. Who made the Earth special? God. I know I explained a lot, even though I probably have to explain a lot more, but hopefully that kind of got people thinking. But real quick, I have my own theory of what happened with the flood, and that is that while the universe was spinning, something God did caused a calamity. I think of it like a spinning top. Maybe God flicked it. I don't know what really happened. It's a mystery. But the universe started shifting. And as it started shifting, a lot of astronomers say it's like a flapping flag. But as it started shifting, that caused a lot of instability, which created the supernovas that we see today. Up at the North Star, there's actually 3 to 6 stars, depending on how you look at it, that we call Polaris. So there's this point that we call Polaris, and there's probably about 3 or 6 stars within it, depending on how you measure it. One of them is a neutron star. There's another word for it that's better suited, but basically pulsar. The pulsar can occasionally shoot a gamma ray burster. A gamma ray burster is like a laser that shoots across the galaxies, has the power of a star by itself. I believe that when this storm in space started happening, creating the supernovas, that created a gamma ray burster that went down and shot down into the Earth's north magnetic pole. And that would start a process where it was shattering the canopy, and that would burrow in to the Earth's core. And when it burrows into the... By the way, this is where I got my hypothesis on that Facebook page, the New Year's Cosmology Hypothesis. That's what this is talking about. So it burrows into the core, which is, Jesus says, I saw Satan fall like lightning. I'm speaking symbolically. You had the constellation Draco, where the North Star used to be. Then it shifts over to the Little Dipper, which is in Arabic called Rekaba, or the little sheep, Lamb of God. Now it's with the Lamb of God, but that gamma ray bursts are shot down, shoots right through into the Earth's core, and that heats these subterranean waters. There's an explosion that creates modern-day Iceland. This creates a crack that separates the Atlantic Ocean. The mid-Atlantic ridge is what's created. Then it shoots all the way across to the east, creating the separating Europe and Africa, creating the Mediterranean, kicking up sandstone, making the Sahara Desert, flipping over the Indian Ocean. Meanwhile, it creates the Atlantic Ocean, shifts over North and South America, creating the Appalachian Mountains, also Nova Scotia and Britain have these chalk beds. Then you shove this over the Rocky Mountain, the Andes Mountains, all this giant mountain range going all the way up and down from Alaska all the way down to Chile is all scooted over. And when it scoots it over, the bed of the, I know I'm just running through this fast, the Pacific Ocean, the bed shoves down, up, and then the Americas shove it over, creating giant trenches. And this whole area is called the Ring of Fire. When it creates those giant trenches, they'll shove further, uplifting these mountains that we call the Tibetan mountains, with Mount Everest and his buddies, that have sea floor organisms in them. And while all this is going on, you have the fountains of the Great Deep shooting across the canopy like if you took a garden hose and shot it at the roof of a refrigerator, spreading everywhere and raining for the 40 days and 40 nights, and then kicking up dirt and water, which turns instantly to ice, shoots the moon in the face, creating the man on the moon, Sea of Tranquility, and then shooting a giant canyon into Mars. So that's my theory. I know. But basically, if we are able to stand upon the shoulders of these different giants, we can start getting there, but we can't get there if we're playing politics. And so that's why I want to talk about independent creationism versus the normal creationism, because also that's the reason why they're anathematizing the King James Bible from the creation discussion. Yeah, Dr. Sungenis is a popular geocentrist. The Catholicism thing makes it a little bit tough, but we actually have had like groups where these like independent Baptists are hanging out with the hardcore Catholics, going over the geocentrism issues. Really weird, but fun. Okay, so Richard Ferks wanted to let us know he's a flat earther. The big divide between this and flat earth, which you might not feel like it if you're like as far off as I am, but it still seems to be a big divide, is the fact that like there's a difference between interpreting the facts and trying to have facts around the facts. So I was arguing for geocentricity, and I noticed how the moon is centered on the earth. It doesn't spin on its own axis. It just faces the earth at all times. And then the moon can get in the way of the sun because it's exactly 400 times smaller in diameter, so it can cover up the sun to make a solar eclipse. Well, that means that the movements of the sun and the moon are ultimately geocentric. So I was like, wow, here's a great argument. And I told somebody who's a flat earther, and their reaction was, no! The sun is the size of an orange, and the moon is the size of an orange. They were mad at my argument that should have helped them. You see what I'm saying? Because it is a series. And this is what the critical school does. They have a series of explanations. You want to stay away from just a series of explanations. You want to have, here's the facts over here, here's the facts over here, here's the facts over here. So like, I want to focus on the Bible before anything else. And I say the sun rises and sets. The classic flat earther says the sun does not rise or set. That doesn't sound so literal. But yeah, the sun goes up, the sun goes down, and it actually is a figure for the resurrection. All right, I have ran my mouth. My throat is dying right now, Nick. Go ahead, throw it out there. Talk back, whatever. What do you think?
No, that's all good. And so we began with looking at the hippopotamus issue, and I found a Answers in Genesis article. Is one of the things about Answers in Genesis is they will say one thing, but then some of their scholars will actually turn around and go against the status quo.
Yeah.
So when it came to unicorn, obviously all the modern Bibles say a wild ox and all this type of thing instead of a rhinoceros. But then some of the best articles on a unicorn being a rhinoceros is actually Answers in Genesis. And I was playing this video on the Textus Receptus Academy that proved that they were talking about a rhinoceros type of creature. And so here it has on the Answers in Genesis website, it says, Bible translators do not being sure what the beast was, often transliterated the Hebrew and thus used the word behemoth. And so King James Version, New King James, NASB, and NIV. However, in many Bible commentaries and footnotes, behemoth is said to be possibly the hippopotamus or elephant. Some Bible versions actually translate behemoth this way. Besides the fact that the elephant and the hippo were not the largest land animals God made, some of the dinosaurs far eclipse these. This description does not make sense since the tail of the behemoth is compared to the large cedar tree in verse 17. Now, an elephant's tiny tail or a hippo's tail that looks like a flap of skin, as we looked at earlier, is quite unlike a cedar tree. Clearly, the elephant and the hippo could not possibly be behemoth, and they've drawn this cartoon there. So I just thought I'd go back and just sort of touch on that. So when it comes to the geocentric models, that would be, I reckon that'll be an interesting debate, because I know there are some people who have, differences in opinion with Matt, and that would be an interesting topic to go through and
yeah. I just want to say, like, with that one, it is so weird psychologically. I still feel the jitters of I was like the kid who was like had the orrery and all that kind of stuff, the science project. So it was a big shock to my system to come to that point of understanding. But I'm telling you, I'll debate anybody. I debated one guy privately. He was an atheist, British guy, had 4 degrees in physics, math, and science. So he didn't want to publicize my debate with him, but I was going to put it out there. And so, I decided that I wouldn't name him, but I just gave him a good acronym because he's in physics and he's in math and he's in science. So I titled him PMS and, showed my debate with him on the internet. And then basically, you just don't realize, it's such a shock to the system that, there's no real evidence going against this. This all kind of makes sense. What doesn't make sense is usually just explained away just because of relative motion and stuff. So, I'll definitely debate somebody on those issues. It's not like I necessarily advertise it to, what church I'm preaching, preached 5 years. I just didn't feel led to kind of bring that subject up. But if you're talking to an atheist and you can convince them of geocentricity, which you can beat them on it. So, you just slap them around. And if they ever, get tired of being beaten so horribly intellectually, then, they'll end up having to believe that there's a God, because there's a specific point and place to the universe, and that's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be all chaos. It's just not. So I've got a blog book, and I put that as a chapter of the blog book because it just is. But at the same time, there's so much politics behind that, so I don't want to, like say, hey, I'm the guy with the tinfoil hat or anything. But it's also not a conspiracy. It's just an interpretation. Like, it's not, it wouldn't hurt me if the earth is spinning around as far as like my Christianity. I can just say, well, we're using poetic language and it just wasn't meant to say that. But once you start going down that route, it just completely, utterly makes sense. And it keeps on pointing. Like there's a principle called the anthropic principle. It's basically part of the logic of the anthropic principle. The thing that people are getting weirded out about is the sun versus the earth, but they're not thinking about the universe versus the sun. They're not thinking about how the universe moves the sun around. At minimum, their science teaches them 251 kilometers per second is the movement of the sun. But they're just not guided to think about those things.
Yeah. Even like sometimes I'll be talking to atheists on the street and they want to know where I'm coming from. And one thing that I did, it sort of came out of my mouth when I was talking to these atheists. I said, look, I don't really think black holes are real. I don't think that a black hole, that gravity can actually exist without matter, because wherever there's matter, the bigger the matter, the larger the gravity. So if you have no matter, but then it comes down to them saying that you can have condensed matter, which comes down to, well, that's been proven in the Big Bang Theory. You had everything condensed to the point where it was like a pin dot on a page, and everything was so tightly condensed, but the gravity was huge. Where I'm like, I'd love to see you condense something like the Earth to a pin dot, let alone the whole universe.
Yeah. Well,
but,
I did see one article in my studies that, like, black holes are not mathematically sustainable. And what are they? This is where you learn the difference between observation and interpretation. There is something to where they've observed light and things disappear into a certain area. That is the observation. What the observation is going to be what you put into it. They say that the stars are a product of fusion. You've not been inside a star. You don't know if the light that you're seeing comes from the center of the sun or it just comes from the outer shell of the sun. We've not been to the center of the earth. We've not been to the center of the moon, center of the, we've been to the center of the asteroid, but center of the other planets. There's just so much that we don't know and we don't quantify. So, you have to have a good epistemology to kind of deal that out.
Yeah. And one thing I thought I'd bring up too, just when you were chatting about that, I had a picture up of the time-space continuum, the whole, from the Big Bang, they have exactly 13.77 billion years now. So they've worked out that it's 0.77, But
well, now here's what's funny. A lot of people don't know this. They actually had to go backwards. And I think when push has come to shove, they stay backwards. But it's actually 11 point something billion. They went to 13.8, and then all of a sudden, oops, we were wrong mathematically. And they go backwards. But, that's not supposed to happen. They want it to, have more, because even the evolution itself doesn't seem to have enough time. And that was the whole reason everything started, was you needed time to have the evolution. And you needed the evolution because you didn't want God to interfere with the universe. You wanted a closed system. And you could know everything with an enclosed system.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was bringing up Dawkins, and he was talking about the age of things and how the universe is expanding. But when you read through the scriptures, you wouldn't think that in the beginning God created fish and they were all tiny little eggs, or chickens and their eggs. what came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, he made giant whales. He made them with age. When he made man, he didn't make Adam and Eve little babies. He made them with age. So for God to actually, in time, create something with already with age just makes sense. That when he created the universe, he created it with an age. So I believe when he made Adam and Eve, they would have had a certain age about them. They wouldn't have been little babies. And so...
And one thing that people have to remember is that when we kind of come up with some of these ideas, we still have that mentality to kind of make rules. So, for instance, when we're talking about evolution and microevolution and macroevolution, I'll be honest, there are times where I'm thinking what some people think is a species, because the secular science has kind of really multiplied the definition of species. So sometimes there are, little s species that do transform to another species, and that would be okay. Meanwhile, there are some times when you got a breed that is almost identical except for a couple things, but there's no way that you can get that breed from one to another. So I think there's a guy, Job Martin, talks about this woodpecker. And the woodpecker, there's a normal one, but there's this one out in Europe, and its tongue will slip into the back of its skull and then come out through the nostril and back into the beak. And it's like, how is that possible? Okay, so on that level, I don't think that the breed can shift. But then there's a couple animals that just seem like, they got all this stuff alike, and maybe they did change. Maybe it's a massive change. Like we talk about the snake. I mean, maybe there might be snakes that, there could be dragons that lost their legs and became snakes. And I'm not saying that as a claim of authority. I'm just saying that, remember that there are some things that we don't have objectivity on, and you got to allow some room for that.
There's your woodpecker tongue wrapping around the back of your head. That'd be a great party trick.
Yeah. Just got to pull it out my nose.
Yeah, so that's been a really interesting chat here, Matt, and I'm enjoying just chatting about these things. When probably about 20 years ago in a church that I was in, we watched the whole series of Ken Hovind going through his video series, and that was really helpful for a lot of people because he did mention some very interesting things. Of course, there were things that we didn't agree on. There were just, tiny little things here and there. But like you're saying, well, that's science, and you wouldn't expect that people 100 years ago had, exactly everything ironed out, because, this knowledge is expanding, just like with knowledge of any field. The knowledge is expanding, so we have to, reword how we're saying things with new knowledge as it comes along. But it's been very interesting chatting about this.
And one thing that people have to remember is that, let's say with Kent Hovind, you have to know how to understand him. Okay. Kent will talk about things that are his biggest expertise, but he'll talk about things that he has little expertise in. And, this is where, we look at him, we look at our buddy Jonathan. Okay. Hey, I feel kind of cool because I actually met both of them. But basically, there's a process of let me have just a strong stance and do things sharp and politically. Sometimes there's a need for that. Sometimes there is a need to just go deeper and kind of walk by faith and just throw it and see if it sticks to the wall. And I think sometimes it's better to kind of take a chance. Right now, I'm very confident on the topic of cosmology because I just went through about 5 or 6 years of just focus, not to mention 20 years before, but, I interviewed on my show, I interviewed about 30 creation scientists and just really just kind of went through it. And once I got all the questions answered, I was just like, okay, they're in. I wasn't going to go back to school and become a physics professor because that would take 5 years, thousands of dollars of debt, and then I'd be put over into some closet somewhere where I could publish a paper that nobody who had listened to me would read. You know what I'm saying? I just knew that God had called me to ministry, so that's about as far as I was going to go with it. But learning these deeper things, Proverbs says that the search out of matter is the heart of kings. So that's why we use the King James Bible.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Well, Matt, we've nearly gone for 4 hours. I think we should shut it down. But it's been really great chatting, and I'll let you go on with the rest of your evening, and okay. I'll move on with the rest of my day. And so, that was really interesting, and it would be good to touch on some of these other issues. Like maybe we can do a whole program on some of these micro issues. We can talk about some of these things. Like it was great to also look at what different versions are saying. Like say with the issue of heaven and heavens, bringing up those type of issues. And I know there are quite a lot of issues with like the how the word day is used in the Bible. Because I used to oftentimes say, well, the word day always means one singular day. But then as I studied the Bible a bit more, I was like, hang on, no, it does talk about the day of the Lord and as a period of time. And it's like, okay, that's interesting. And so I had to sort of back off on some of these arguments, but I still believe them. But I haven't really developed an argument for it. I've just gone, well, actually, I sort of proved myself wrong there. But
what'd you think about and I skipped one, but it's just so much topic, right? But like the Mark chapter 10 topic, I didn't bring up about Jesus' teaching on creation and marriage and everything like that. So I was going to bring up that, but we did bring up plenty enough, like between the Hebrews and the Exodus 29. What did you think about my strategy about bringing up, alternative passages? That way, kind of lighten things up a little.
Yeah, no, I think it was good. It's good because we're just sort of touching on a few of these issues, letting people know what some of the issues are, and also how we, we're asking questions. We're looking at all these creation ministries and saying who has good answers. We know that some of these guys only go so far. Some of them have a wrong bibliology, and so we're hoping to win people over to a correct bibliology. Yeah. That would be an ideal thing to happen is if someone like Answers in Genesis or Jonathan Safadi, some of these guys just said, actually, I've become a King James, Textus Receptus, Masoretic text person. That would save a lot of, raising up a whole army of other people who do have that foundation. Now, I know there are a lot of people who actually do have that foundation. They do have the knowledge of a Ham and a Sephardi, but they're just not well known. And so,
and the problem is that like it's real because there are a couple King James only guys in the mainstream camp. They're just not allowed to talk about it.
Yeah,
and there's one I know. I think we've talked about, and he told me, and he's been with them and stuff like that. He could probably get back on if they wanted him to. But basically, they would just tell him, don't use the King James. When you're with us, use ESV. But a lot of guys inside the movement, they do believe. And, I'm glad of that, but I'm also realizing, okay, but the leadership is not really listening. you know, and they're not really going to listen. But what you can do is you can use that to kind of springboard to other stuff later. So, you know, like, I'm glad that there's a creation museum, you know, and there's also another facility, and it's in my state. Praise Jesus. You know, I'm happy that at least we're starting to finally get some of this stuff out there. And if they're not ready to take that step, you can just take a step from them and take your own step afterwards. Oh, yeah. And this is the thing, like, what I like about your show is that if there's ever a platform, it's the Bible. And if we're going to have this renaissance of fundamentalism, then this is the place we start. You know, we start with people who really are invested in the scripture and really want to see this stuff and really, you know, to search out a matter. They want to search out a matter. They want to seek wisdom from God. And I think that, you know, we'll definitely be able to move things forward, you know, and, you know, I think that you've been a blessing to me, but I think that you're a blessing to the whole community.
Well, cheers, Matt. Thanks for that. And it'd be great to go through some of these topics, and also just looking at all the different variants of belief out there on this issue, because there's so many different voices, and I guess getting to the point where it's like, okay, well, people are in a young earth camp. That's a very good start. But then we want to make sure that, you know, people are adhering to the scriptures, like you're saying. We want the scripture to be our foundation, not being swayed just by new fads that are coming along in scientism. You know, genuine science and pseudoscience, you know, oftentimes it's how things are just interpreted. But yeah.
Last thing, I mean, just a second here. I wanted to do some show and tell. The Church in the Age of Revolution, Alec R. Vidler. I got a lot of material out of this one. I'm not sure if it's like necessarily famous, but this will really help a lot of you guys out if you can find this one, dealing with the 1800s in that time of evolution, liberalism, and lots of stuff on textual criticism here. And also in discordance with the scriptures, Peter J. Thusen. This was dealing with the Revised Standard Version, the virgin birth scripture, and basically the drama and stuff that kind of happened at that period in the 1950s.
No, that sounds really good. We had a couple of questions, or just one more question, and then I think we'll back out. And so we got Derek McClure way back a few hours ago said, stepped in and then out. So apologies if this has been brought up, but I've got to know, where do the pyramids fit in? And so I would just answer that and say, well, the pyramids are made by men. The pyramids are amazing structures, but I wouldn't say that there's any type of supernatural element to the pyramids. I mean, when you go to Mexico, you know, they're hardworking people. You look at their ziggurats and things, you go, well, the Mexicans made it. When you go to Egypt, you're like, well, aliens made it. I think we just look at these. They're just huge ancient structures. I don't think there's anything really spiritual about them. There might have been spiritual significance to the people who built them, to their gods and all that type of thing. But what are your thoughts on that, Matt, as we close?
All right. So if you look at January of this year on my blog, I have a full report on Egyptology. So check that out. By the way, there was a conspiracy to bring this out from the Masons. So that's kind of cool. I believe that it had to be after the flood. There's underwater fossils and stuff like that underneath the desert. I think that I probably listened more to Herodotus, who said that they came from the Phrygian people, and they had special machines to prop up. They would take the sand, put some chemical in them. that kind of stuff. Yeah, that article right there. I borrow a lot from Creation Ministries International for this one. They had a lot of good material on it. But yeah, so yeah, check out that article, and that'll kind of get you deep.
All right, I'll just put that article into the mix there. And I'm going to shut this down, Matt. So it's been good catching up with you. I really appreciate all the hard work you put into this.
Thank you. God bless you.
Yeah, I'll play the little outro. That'll mute us, but we'll catch up in chat later on.
All right, good.
All right, thanks for joining us, guys. As I mentioned, we're going to be looking at a debate between Jonathan Sheffield and SoCal, or David SoCal Preston. Now, SoCal means he's from California. He's a surfer from California, but he is a King James guy, but he believes the Apocrypha is inspired. And so it's going to be very interesting having a debate like that on this program. And I've just got to set a date for it. And so I found out this morning that he's they're ready to go. So this will be a very interesting thing. So I've got to do this debate before I head off to Pakistan on the 1st of October. So I'm going to have to sort that out. But what I was thinking was, while I'm away in Pakistan, I might still have access and be able to upload all the things that we're doing there. So that'll be fun. So the channel will sort of change modes a little bit. It'll be a bit more what I'm going to do every day. And we're going to go preaching, door knocking. We're doing lots of things there. We're holding crusades. We're going to the brick kiln areas where it's basically like modern day slavery. And so we're going to be doing all that. So it's going to be great fun. I've lived in Pakistan for a year. I love the place. They're beautiful people. And so I'm going to be doing all that. So, yeah, thanks for joining us, guys, today on this very controversial topic of creationism, evolutionism, and, Matt talking about geocentric argumentation that he holds to. So we are, I guess, if anyone watches this and they're like, well, I think what Matt said was not legitimate or whatever, hey, let's have a friendly in-house debate. Even if you're an atheist or whatever, you want to debate Matt on the issues of evolution or abiogenesis or the Big Bang Theory or things like that, or if you're an old Earth person and you want to debate against a young Earther, contact me. My email is ausclix, AUSCLIX @gmail.com. So I'll just quickly put that into the chat there, AUSCLIX, and that's how you can contact me @gmail.com, and we can organize that. Okay, so I'm going to play my little outro, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for joining us.